No one believed me about the angel in the woods. I was told to write this out in therapy. They said it was good for the process. I thought maybe sharing it would help it feel less like a nightmare and more like reality. The woods in South Texas were my home, and my home sounded like the finger picking of an acoustic guitar. As an adult, there's part of me that misses the constant smell and taste of dirt and grass. As a kid, I never noticed it. There was a lot I didn't notice. How much I didn't mind the tiny thorns as I walked barefooted over roots. As an adult, my steps through nature are much more hesitant, even in shoes. I always knew my way back home as a kid. It felt like the woods knew how to keep me safe. However, I thought that was because of the angel in them. My mother told me that everyone had an angel looking out for them. Angels would be there in our most challenging moments. She was smart enough to tell a 6-year-old like me at the time that I shouldn't rely on them for everything. God gave us common sense for a reason, so we better use it when we can, was one thing she liked to say a lot, especially when we did something stupid. I say we, but during this time, I was just an only child. It wasn't until a year later I got a sister. Before I got my sister, I got a dog. Before my dad would leave for work during the summer, he got me a blonde Jack Russell Terrier to keep me company. I named him Charlie. Today I look back and like to think that Charlie was my angel. I was always happier at the end of the summer. The air was getting cooler, rain would come and make the woods pretty with shiny mud and puddles. My birthday was at the end of August, and my dad would be back for a few weeks. A week before my birthday, Dad would be here. I remember my mother got off the phone that morning, setting me out to play. Go on, get out the house for the morning. You can come back and play your games when your daddy's here. Daddy's coming back? I asked. That's right. Sally at the Motel 6 said he stopped last night. Probably didn't want to wake us up so late, she told me. Now go play with Charlie. He'll honk his horn for you like always when he gets here. I dressed myself, tied my shoes, and went off the porch with Charlie into our woods. They were never scary to me. We'd never had any predators since there was a fence my dad built marking our property line. I've never been in the woods at night, though. Today, I made it my mission to try and teach Charlie how to fetch. Getting him to chase a stick was easy. I just didn't know how to get him to bring it back, or even pick it up. It was when the stick I was throwing led to all of this. I wanted it to go far. I wanted to see how fast Charlie could go. I wound my whole body to launch it like I was Hercules. The stick whipped through the air and crashed against a tree, where it landed and disturbed a sleeping rabbit. That little critter felt only a small fraction of my might, and knew to start running. Unfortunately, it now had the interests of my loyal hound. Charlie took off after it, faster than I ever saw him move. Charlie! I yelled out before I started to keep up. He was much faster than me. He had twice as many legs. My own two could barely keep me up as I tripped over a tree root, raising my hands, hoping to stop myself, but I was going so fast into another tree. Tree bark hooked in my cheeks and tore away small patches of skin. It stung a lot, but I was too out of breath to register the pain. Then I heard Charlie barking. He rarely barks. I picked myself up and started my run again, hopping off one foot and onto the other as my chest burned. I followed the barks until I reached our fence. Charlie's barks were over and beyond our territory. I had to cross into enemy lines. The fence wasn't that hard to climb. However, it was hard to climb down. I let myself drop into sticks and grass, where I said my first swear to myself. Shit! It slipped out as I looked at my hands. Charlie's barks reminded me of my mission. Rose up to my feet, cautiously looking around. In the distance, I saw a small structure. I made my way over to see Charlie standing by it, just barking. Charlie! I yelled at him before running up and hugging him. He looked at me and looked over to the shed he's been barking at, letting out little whimpers. What is it? I asked him, but I knew better than to expect him to finally reveal he was maybe a talking dog. I put him down and just said stay. For the first time, he listened. I slowly approached the door of the shed, pressing my ear against it and listening. It looked new. It was made of metal too. There was a bike lock on it. I could open the door, and I was able to do so just enough that I could even squeeze through. Before doing so, I looked back at Charlie. Let me know if you see any bad guys. I poked my head through first. The only light was what creaked through the door. It smelled odd, almost kind of sour, like when Charlie peed on the couch. There wasn't much inside except for her. The light that landed on her body made her look as though her skin was made of marble. Her hair was a fiery gold that draped down her back and over her shoulders. She was blindfolded, and her hands were bound to a bar attached to the shed by chains. On her back were her wings. They were black and pressed flat against her skin like a drawing. She wasn't wearing anything except for a crown made of sticks and thorns. She was very pretty, though. Pretty like my mom, except different parts of her face had dried blood. I couldn't tell if she was sleeping because of the blindfold, so I got closer and pressed my hand to her shoulder. A few gentle nudges and she started moving around. Her head rose but swayed off balance as she tried to keep it up. Her mouth opened, but words I didn't understand started to come out with more drops of blood. They almost sounded like words I knew, but they were just wrong. Miss? I said softly. Looking at her, she was pretty, had wings, and spoke oddly. Are you an angel? Her head began to sway up and down very slowly. Do you need help? My mom said angels help us. She also told me they don't speak to us like how we speak to each other. Her head kept swaying up and down. Her face entered the light. I didn't know angels could bleed. I looked at the chains. I think my dad has something to cut those. I'm going to go look. I promise I'll be right back. I raced home with all sorts of questions floating through my head, mostly all about angels. Why don't they wear clothes? Do they eat? Sleep? How do they see with blindfolds? Mom always said that God gave them everything they needed, but it seemed like they needed help this time. Maybe Charlie was an angel sent by God to lead me to her. Once I got over the fence, I just had to run from it and home would be in sight soon. Even though my home was small, it was easy to spot. It was built on stilts and painted blue. I could tell I was coming from behind as I couldn't see the porch. Charlie kept up with me, but as we got up the steps, he hopped on a chair and waited for me as I went inside. My mom called out my name as I went to the underside of the sink. What are you doing, sweetie? She said, the stench of cigarettes entering into the room before she did. I'm looking for chain scissors. I said as if that was a real term. I could feel her confused stare before correcting me. You mean bolt cutters? What the hell for? She then got closer and noticed my battle wounds. Jesus, hon, your face. Get out from under there, go sit at the table. She grabbed me by the arm and lifted me up. I knew better than to fight back, but I still argued. But Mama, there's an angel behind the fence, and before I could finish, she cut me off with anger. Boy, what do you mean behind the fence? Charlie was chasing a rabbit and he went back there. That doesn't mean you do, she said. If you weren't already scratched up and your daddy wasn't coming back, I'd whoop you. I kept quiet. She got out a first aid kit. I held her cigarette as she put the medicine and bandage on my face. Once she finished, we heard the horn. I hopped off the table and ran out the door. Charlie was barking excitedly behind me. My dad stepped out of the truck preparing himself for my assault of a hug. I braced myself into him, taking in the scent of smoke, diesel, and dirt. His bare claw of a hand brushed through my hair. Hey, little man, let me get a look at you. He spoke and sounded like a cowboy. He managed to pry me out of my hug to see my face. His gaze of awe quickly hardened into one of concern. However, he didn't do it for me. His eyes locked into my mom. What the hell did you do to my boy? He said in a stern but polite tone. I didn't do anything to your boy but put the bandage on him. How about you ask him? Mom said with a bit of attitude. Dad looked back at me. Sounds like you got a story to tell me, Dad said, taking a seat on the steps of the semi, pulling me up on his knee. I was teaching Charlie how to play fetch, and we spooked a rabbit, and then Charlie went chasing him. And I had to rescue Charlie, and he went over the fence. I couldn't leave him, so I rescued him, and then we found the angel. Your son scraped himself going over the fence, my mom interrupted. I heard that, Marlene. I also heard you say, let him tell it. My mom was about to say something again before my dad cut her off. Don't interrupt my boy again. Now go on, tell me more about the angel. She needs help, so I came back to get bolt cutters to rescue her, I said. That's mighty brave of you. She's real, Daddy. She had wings on her back and hair like the sun, I tried to explain. His eyes widened a bit, probably because I interrupted him, but I wanted to save her. I believe you, boy. He looked at my mother, who definitely didn't believe me, or was too mad about the fence. If she's really an angel, she can wait. I'll go save her myself. Joe, Mom said, but was quickly cut off. After I spend some time with you all first. I missed you so much. He picked me up and sent me flying. The sensation of being lifted to the house was like a dream. Dad knew all the secrets to turning me into a superhero. He set me down and told me to get a movie going while he talked to Mom. She came up the porch, and Dad rushed me inside, closing the door. I could still hear. I didn't like to listen when they were by themselves, nor did I like them without me. They didn't seem as happy when I wasn't in the room. Even at so young, I understood how much I kept them together. I almost forgot about the angel for most of the afternoon. We ended up watching Last Crusade since I got a DVD set for Indiana Jones last Christmas. We finished the evening with a game of Yahtzee, my mom's favorite. Dad took me to bed, and my angel nightlight gave me the reminder, but also an idea. Dad, you should take Charlie with you. What? He said, standing in my doorway as he was about to leave. He knows where the angel is, I explained. I see. Don't worry, I haven't forgotten. Get some rest, son. We told each other good night and I love you. I had trouble sleeping. I wasn't sure if Dad really believed me until it was late. I couldn't smell my mom's cigarettes anymore. That usually meant she was asleep. I heard noise in the kitchen and the front door. Even if it was real quiet, this house was too small to hide anything. It must have been Dad going to help the angel. I heard him whistle past my window calling Charlie. I used his brief, waning whistle as a lullaby. I wish I could remember the dream. I like to think it was about the angel. My dreams didn't understand that they were supposed to appear in my sleep. My alarm clock that morning was marital troubles expressed through verbal abuse. I don't remember much of what was said. Nothing came clear until I opened the door and tones got quieter. Just start making some damn pancakes, Dad said. I stepped into the little hall, past the little living room, into the little dining space. Have a seat there, little man. Mama's making pancakes. The room was silent. It was missing something. I looked over the open door to a quiet screen door. Usually when I'm up, Charlie is right there with his paw on the glass looking in. Mom, where's Charlie? I asked. I couldn't see her, but as soon as I asked, I heard the metal clink of a Zippo. Ask your father, she said softly. I turned my head to him. He looked really tired. I didn't have to speak, and neither did he. However, he went ahead and lied, and I went ahead believing it. He's with the angel, he began. I went to go save her, and she offered to take Charlie with her back to heaven to get him some wings. It took me years to learn his lies to me were also spoken slowly and clearly, as if he was checking his own false facts. You're gonna get a flying dog soon, he said with excitement, and it made me giggle. Okay, was all that I could say with a smile. We ate breakfast, and I learned what soon meant. Soon wasn't the next day, it wasn't the next month or Christmas. Soon didn't come next year or at any future birthdays. Soon came almost 20 years later for me to see Charlie and the angel again. I did go back to the shed a few days later. Maybe she didn't know where I lived. However, it was empty. No proof she was ever there. All I found from that memory was the bike lock, used to keep the door closed, tossed aside by a tree. It was open, and the digits were my birthday. And that was No One Believed Me About the Angel in the Woods, by Dat Punk Georgie. So, I think we're going to have to get the immediate critique out the way just so we can go on to the more fun parts of the conversation. Little rough to read at parts. Certain grammatical, certainly weird irks here and there. Grammar wasn't the best choice in every situation. Some of the sentences were weirdly worded and structured and kind of just like required me to read it a few times and hurt a little bit. And in one sentence you used little like 3 times. Little unnecessary. Anyway, critiquing aside, I like this story. I mean, first of all, the title alone drew me into it. No One Believed Me About the Angel in the Woods. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's quite cool. That's quite fun. But then it also makes me think, well, what kind of an angel are we dealing with? Because as I've digested a variety of different books, movies, shows, what have you, angels, they can come in a variety of forms. I think it's archetypes is the specific definition, right? I'll probably put up a little infographic on screen, I'm sure. But there's a variety of types of angels depending on the kind of situation. Now, usually we're more accustomed to seeing just typical representation of just an angel, right? Like a somewhat humanoid with the wings and everything like that. And so I was like, oh, is it going to be one of those? Is it going to be a little bit horrific, perhaps? One of the different ones, like the more biblically spoken ones with the like many eyes and everything. And sure enough, it kind of went the way that I expected it to, where somebody has captured an angel of a kind and trapped them. But then I thought about it further, especially as I finished the story up. And there's these interesting context clues that kind of make me think the story's not quite what we think it is. Especially because you have to remember, this is told from a future therapy session for this main character, but it's a memory they had when they were 6 years old. So obviously, details might be fuzzy. They won't remember everything super perfectly. It's totally understandable. I don't remember all my things when I was a young kid. It completely makes sense. So if anything, the fact you remember all this is definitely stuck with you, which is incredible. So somebody, instead of announcing to the world that they have an angel and that they're perhaps a messenger of God, and using that to make themselves look incredible to the rest of the world, decides to lock them up. Locks up this angel, strips them. I'm assuming they might. I mean, they might not have worn clothes at all anyway, but it's weird details, right? And also the thing about the wings. Are we for sure that it's an angel? But then, I mean, she could have been just speaking a different language. It could have been somebody who was kidnapped. Very possible, some kind of a human trafficking situation going on. Horrific thought, no matter what. The fact is, somebody is being held hostage and most likely being abused in some way, shape, or fashion. Whether it's an angel or a human, it's still horrific. But it seems like the parents are in on it. Especially when you think the fact that so he's mapped out this property, he's got his own property line of a fence that the dad's made himself, and weirdly this shed is just beyond that. It's not like the kid ran for miles and found this random shed. It was, I mean, probably within, say, a couple 100 feet of the property line. That's weirdly close, right? That's weirdly close. I feel like the dad has secretly not actually mapped his proper property line. Perhaps he's left that out to keep, say, the facade of the fact that he's not actually doing these things. But he is. It definitely feels like, especially the fact that the lock had his birthday. I mean, that could just be a crazy coincidence, but it's a really weird coincidence when you're talking about, this is a small town situation where, like, their next door neighbors might be, say, a mile or two away, for example. I mean, I used to live in one of those, and yeah, like, we didn't really have any neighbors that were nearby. Like, you would have to drive a little bit just to meet your next door neighbor, and it was like crazy. So it's entirely possible, especially in a place like Texas. Texas is huge. I can absolutely believe that. So it absolutely makes sense that he is the one kidnapping these people, or even if it was an angel. But then where would he have found the angel, right? Whether you look at this story as it's actually an angel or not, it gives you two different directions of questions. But they ultimately still ask the same kind of questions, like, where did he get them? Why is he locking them? I mean, we could imagine some of the answers to these, and that's not really something I want to do, but it makes sense, right? And I think it's very sad, right? It's very sad, and the thing that also irks me is why get rid of the dog? It's just unnecessary. The dog's not going to say anything. The dog can't say anything. It might bark, might make noises, it might not act the same around him anymore. But the kid wouldn't know. The kid wouldn't be able to put that together, I think, and not 6 years old. It's just strange. The things that this made me think of actually were so first off, weirdly, the movie Splice, which is from 2009, it's a sci-fi horror film. I'm not going to go heavily into details because it can be pretty disturbing. I wouldn't recommend everybody watch it. It wasn't amazing. It wasn't terrible, but it's got some very much trigger warning issues and stuff. But yet again, it's the point is it's this creature that can kind of change its shape, which it doesn't quite fit in with the fact that it's an angel. I wouldn't really call it an angel in Splice. It's definitely more like a shape-shifting kind of a thing. But it's mostly humanoid, and it doesn't really speak English, and it's being held captive and stuff like that. That's why it made me think of that. Another one that it really makes me think of is the TV show Midnight Mass from 2021 on Netflix. And I won't spoil anything about that because if you haven't seen it and you love horror, this is really good. This one's really, really good. You should definitely watch this. I'm not going to say anything more on that. Some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. Great show. Great show. And then the last thing it funnily enough made me think of was a specific episode of Courage the Cowardly Dog, which is I think it's called The Mask. It's got this cat, this female cat. I think her name is Kitty, and she's trying to save her friend Bunny. She's trying to save her friend Bunny, and she doesn't trust dogs because dogs are the reason that Bunny's kind of in danger and everything like that. But yet again, Bunny is being held captive for reasons that probably aren't her fault. You know, and it's weird that it made me think of that. It really is. I think it's just the held captive kind of a thing. Anyway, so I've enjoyed the story. I've really enjoyed this story. It's like I said, besides a couple little typos and crap like that, it was quite entertaining. And quite frankly, the OP's even put in the little end of the Reddit story there, and it says, "I can't comment any further until the trial is complete. I only got away with this due to leaving out dates and changing names. I may show more if my therapist thinks the interactions are beneficial to my perception of it all." Which means we could have some updates inevitably. And I don't know about you, but updates for a story could be pretty sweet. So I'm happy to keep my eyes out for that if it's what you'd like. I think it's a great idea. This has been a lot of fun. I've been Nate at Night. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you yet again, Dat Punk Georgie, for this opportunity. And thank you all so much for watching. Let me know down in the comments below what this made you think of. If it made you maybe inspired by something, or perhaps it made you think of a specific show or a movie, or maybe even a book. Let me know down below. I really want to know. We will see you next time.
The God in the Well. I lived in an old-fashioned neighborhood, in an old-fashioned town as a kid, not befitting of the 21st century. It must have looked like something out of a vintage magazine advertisement at one point, but a coat of decay had been painted over everything. Unwieldy plant life clung to every building. There were burned down houses nobody ever bothered to rebuild. There were closed buildings nobody ever bothered to reopen. It was the perfect place to live if you were a child with a preference for exploration or an elderly person with a preference against it. Everyone in between didn't much care for it. It was spring break, and I was broken. Broken in the left arm, specifically. That's the price one pays for exploration. I'd bumped my cast on the guardrails around the stairs that led to the church's entrance that day. Time passes slowly when you're that age. When you've only lived through 9 springs. You're not good at waiting. Waiting for your arm to heal is like waiting for the second coming of Christ, which the service that day was about. Another boy a year older than me noticed the cast. "Are you letting people sign that?" "I don't know. I've seen it in movies and on the TV. People let their classmates sign their cast." "You're not my classmate." "Donnie, we've done Sunday school together. Just let me sign it. When'd you get it anyway?" "If you'd been paying more attention, you'd know it was 2 weeks ago." He started signing it without waiting for affirmation. He had a red crayon on hand. His signature read, Ben. If one could call it a signature. It was closer to print. He hadn't figured out a fancy way to write his name yet. "I'm trying to heal right now. It's hard for me not to be able to do stuff. My family's praying on it." "That ain't gonna work. You wanna know what really works?" "It will too work. Don't say things like that near the Lord's house." He could tell he defended me, so he backed off. It was a week later, and many other signatures had huddled up next to his. I could feel no progress in my arm. It's just as broken as ever. So I decided to approach him about it. "We've been praying for my arm to heal, and nothing has happened yet. It still feels the same." "I told you it wouldn't work." "I wanted to ask you about that. What does work?" He leaned in and shifted his lower jaw around in anticipation. "If you want to get something healed, you gotta go to the real God. Not the fake one. The fake God's in there." He pointed to the church. "The real God's in the well." "Why?" "Because it's where people don't expect him to be." "What well?" "Taylor's well." "Where's that?" "You'll have to talk to Taylor. I could take you to him." I told my parents I was going off to play with a friend. They were permissive when it came to that sort of thing. Ben and I bothered insects walking through weeds and flowers, hopped over creeks, and walked down roads I'd never used until I realized we were back in my own neighborhood. It was simply a part of it I'd never visited. A dead-end street hidden under the curve of a hill and behind a curtain of intrusive trees. The sidewalk started and ended where it shouldn't. Weeds and grass blades erupted out of the cracks between each cement rectangle, and the street looked like some giant had taken a hammer to it. Houses that may have once been homogeneous were now individuated by different degrees of decay and abandonment. It was everything I recognized about the town distilled into one area. I heard a dog barking at us from somewhere. Ben decided to reassure me. Don't worry, he's trapped behind a fence. He can't kill you or nothing. He gestured to a decrepit one-story house with a "Beware of Dog" sign outside. Does he want to kill me? Ben realized he'd said the wrong thing and stopped himself from doing it again. Don't you worry about nothing. We're close to God anyways. He brought me to the least unkempt house in the area and rang its doorbell. Another boy opened the door. He was older and huskier than either of us. His eyes went to my cast as soon as he got a look at me. Come in. His house was a mess. A dog, less threatening than the one outside, sat amidst a mound of stuffing it had ripped out of some unfortunate pillow. The trash bag in the kitchen was overflowing, and things that shouldn't be anywhere but in a trash bag were all over the floor. Nothing looked like it had been swept, dusted, or vacuumed in years. I had to ask a question. Do you live here alone? Much of the time. Do you have parents? Some of the time. You've healed people before? He has. The God in the well. Every kid in the area with a physical problem finds their way here eventually. The word always reaches them. God works in mysterious ways. Ben decided to wedge himself into the conversation. Taylor and I go way back. They weren't old enough to go way back, unless they knew each other as babies. Ben had probably heard that phrase from someone else and not understood it. I knew what he was getting at, though. Where's the well? The house next to this one. Nobody lives there. We headed into his backyard. The grass was high enough to be irritating to walk through. An unused lawnmower rusted near the door. Taylor turned to us. We're hopping the fence. And so we did. I'd hopped fences before, but not with a broken arm. We were taken to a different yard. A larger yard that was given even more to the wild. Fences separated it from the dead-end street, but not from the woods that crept behind it. A ways out from the house behind us was a well. The sort of thing you didn't see often outside of old-fashioned neighborhoods in old-fashioned towns. This is where God is. Under the ground, in the well. Not many grown-ups know this. It's a secret. And you've got to swear not to tell any of them about this place. Not unless they're desperate enough to heal a child that you could trust them. They'd build a church over it. They'd sing and drive and hammer nails and make an awful lot of noise. The God in the well wouldn't like this. The last 10 or so steps I had to take toward the well were more difficult than the rest of the journey so far. What happened to the version of me a week ago who'd shut down Ben for speaking blasphemy? Now the well was within my sights. What if God wasn't in the well? What if God, who was in the church, decided to damn me for not trusting him? But he hadn't healed my arm yet. As far as my child mind was concerned, no progress had been made despite praying on it every day. Walking up to it couldn't hurt. Looking in it couldn't hurt. A circle of bricks, a triangular prism roof, and a bucket dripping from a rope. It was unremarkable, just as worn by weather as the house it hid behind, as the rest of the dead-end street. My legs moved as if it were they, not my arm, that were injured. Ben put his hand on my shoulder and offered a warning. Don't go any further unless you're sure. Unless you believe. The call to believe forced more doubt into my head. Taylor was less patient than Ben. Either walk up to the well or don't. What do I do after I walk up to it? You wait. That's what you do. I got close enough to look down the well into the dark. I couldn't see the bottom of it. Its roof curtained it with a shadow that no shimmer managed to tear through. I didn't like looking into the well. I couldn't stop imagining myself falling into it, or imagining Taylor pushing me in. Taylor began to instruct me. You have to wait by the well. Wait until nightfall. It could take hours. My parents will be upset with me if I don't come home. They'll be happier that you'll have your arm back. Was it a trick? Was it a joke? If so, I could make it back home fast enough. I'd figured out the way back. It's not as if I didn't know where I was. I invented explanations in my head while I sat by the well. Explanations that sounded less sacrilegious. I'd later learn that Ben called my parents to say I was at his house, and Taylor called Ben's parents to say Ben was at his house. There weren't many streetlights here. Night was night. I could see the stars, but everything else radiated darkness. The kind of darkness that threatened to swallow me up. I'd gotten over my fear of the dark, but this was a new context. A context that wrestled that particular fear back into the open. Crickets and the occasional barking dog scored the experience from a distance. Saved me from potentially maddening silence. I had no way of knowing how late it was. A spider crawled across the edge of the well. Without thinking twice, I flicked it inside. Let it fall into the darker, still pit. I was tempted to doze away. I might have, because after a slow blink, I heard a voice. I heard it the same way I hear voices in my dreams, and not in the way I hear them while awake. Donnie, Donnie, Donnie. I looked around and said all I could think to say. That's my name. It is my name too, for all names are mine to take as I see fit. The voice echoed from behind and below me, from the bottom of the well. Are you going to heal me? First, you must pray to me. I pray that you will heal me. Amen. Nothing happened. Why didn't you heal me? That wasn't good enough. But those were the rules. You were insincere. This answer did not satisfy me. He stepped around my concern. I decided to sweeten things up. I decided to think about how happy I would be. How happy my family would be, even were I to return home with a fully healed arm. I stopped thinking and spoke. God in the well, I come before you as your humble servant. I give you my left arm so that you may please heal it. Amen. You try to prove your sincerity now. I'm new to this. You must jump into the well. Why? To prove yourself. Jump. Doing so will not harm you in the way that you imagine. Will I land on you? I have no body. Not yet. It's why your kind have not discovered my kind. There is nothing for you to land on. I felt something akin to a harsh wind urging me into the well. I could not resist it, and so I fell. I fell for what felt like hours. I passed through some liquid so dark that it didn't shine in the moonlight. Passed through it soaking wet, and continued falling until I dried, and a harsh light came at me from below and I crashed into it, finding myself outside the well as the sun rose. I tore off my cast because I could feel the difference. My left arm had healed. Light either seemed to reflect from or radiate off of it, at least for a moment before dissipating. I had witnessed my first miracle. My parents couldn't believe it. Who would? They'd known that I'd authentically broken my arm, though. They settled on the explanation that a miracle had occurred, that their prayers for me had been answered. I didn't tell them about the God in the well. My arm, which ordinarily felt fine, began to experience a cramping, burning sensation every time I attended church with my family. The sensation would come when I entered the doors and leave when I exited. I could tolerate it, though. It's not like I needed my left arm at church. Taylor insisted it was because God had marked my arm, and false places of worship rejected it as such. Ben and I recommended the God in the well to more people. Taylor felt that if enough children came to understand where to look for God, the next generation would achieve greater spiritual elevation. We'd have special knowledge our parents' generation didn't. There was a boy named Stephen who broke his nose. There was a girl named Janet who suffered from a swollen spleen. There was a boy named Jamie who had the worst case of strep throat I'd ever seen. Every time we brought someone to the well, I was amazed. Some of them didn't even attend the local church, so I didn't imagine they experienced the pain I did when I attended. Years passed, and I ended up attending a college within driving distance. I wasn't attending church anymore. I was able to put the God in the well out of my mind during my freshman year. The fact that Janet attended the same college was the only thing that occasionally caused me to reminisce. I'd explained none of it to my roommate Malik. I'd like to think that if he suffered an injury or came down with a terrible illness, I might have, But in reality, I was embarrassed, and his good health was simply an excuse not to sound crazy in front of him. It wasn't until the sophomore year that the hunger began. A strange kind of hunger. It radiated from my left arm rather than my stomach. But hunger is all I know to call it. The pangs were at first hard to distinguish from the sort of sensation one feels when one's muscles are reconstructing after exercising them, but it became clear to me that it was something else. My arm was marked by the god in the well, and hungered to return there. I experienced flashes of the well, awake and asleep, and salivated. It was a place, not a food I hungered for. I never experienced anything like it. I ran into Janet on campus one night, or rather, she went out of her way to run into me. Her eyes bugged toward mine. You felt it too, don't you? The hunger. I did. We'd both thought to call it the same thing. Yeah. You know what we have to do, right? We have to go back to the well. I'd considered it. So that settles it. We go together Sunday. I didn't object. She was set on it. When Sunday came around, the two of us hopped into her car and headed to my old neighborhood. I didn't have to provide her with instructions. She knew where she was going. She was hungrier than I was. I could tell that much. Maybe it's just harder to ignore when it's coming from your spleen. She explained herself during the ride. At first, I thought I just needed food. I stuffed myself, but it didn't work. The hunger persisted. I didn't feel it in my gut because I needed food. I felt it in my gut because that's where I was marked. I need to see the well again. What if it's not like we remember? We were just kids. I don't care if it's like we remember. I need to see it. The dead-end street was in an even greater state of disrepair than I'd last seen it by the time we arrived at 6 p.m. that night. Jumping fences gets easier as you get taller, but harder as you get heavier. I was thankful to have developed in a lanky direction. As soon as we'd hopped the fence, Taylor was there to greet us. It had been several years since I'd last interacted with him, but had no difficulty recognizing him. He spoke up. We've been waiting. He led us further into the backyard. A campfire was situated on a patch of earth so that its sparks did not reach the wild grass. It stabbed at the air, and its crackle overpowered the chorus of crickets I remembered attending every past visit to this place. Ben, Stephen, and 3 other young adults I didn't recognize sat around it. Stephen turned towards us. He couldn't stop rubbing his nose. You got the hunger. We all did. It seems like it's only those of us who've come of age, too. None of the kids. We're missing Jamie, I inserted. We're waiting, responded Ben. There are at least 4 more people who should be here. You ain't met them all. One by one, we waited as more people arrived. Some came by car, and others walked. Jamie, who winced as he rubbed his neck, arrived last. It was 9 p.m., and we were all hungry. Taylor took charge. Everyone get around the well. We did as he said. He seemed to be more familiar with the well than any of us were. The fire went out of its own accord, but my arm felt hotter than I could have ever imagined, as if it were being scalded from the inside out. It radiated light, as did Janet's gut, Stephen's nose, and so on. I could see which body part had been healed by the god in the well in each of the young adults who surrounded me, but was in too much pain to pay attention. Then, as if amputated by an invisible blade, my left arm detached itself from my body. Light flashed and skin bubbled over the wound. It was a bloodless process. I collapsed in shock as my arm wormed its way to the well. I saw legs, arms, a nose, throat, torso, each becoming an independent organism and crawling into the well. I was fortunate enough to have lost a non-vital part of my body. Janet, Jamie, and a few others who I didn't know by name weren't so fortunate. I couldn't move. I had no means by which to emotionally grasp what had just happened to me. By the time I managed to sit up, I saw something emerging from the well, cobbled together from the various body parts acquired. It was almost human-shaped, but had too many of certain parts. Too many arms. I remember the words of the god in the well from years ago. I have no body. Not yet. It saw that I was staring at it and drew closer to me. I wasn't used to moving with just one arm and tumbled. It had no trouble moving in its new body. Its 2 right hands clutched me and flipped me over. Its 2 left hands, one of which was mine there moments ago, grabbed my face and pulled it up. It was taller than me. It had 2 stomachs stacked on top of each other. It bent its spine until its face, which bore Stephen's nose, was inches away from mine. Then it smiled. I heard the voice I'd heard coming out of the well years ago. Only now I heard it in the way I hear voices while awake. Thank you. A drop of drool trailed from its lips. It set me down and walked closer to the well. Thank you all. You have done a great service. It darted away into the woods while I lay dumbfounded, surrounded by people missing body parts and body parts missing people. I didn't know where it went. I didn't know what it was doing. I just knew that it was doing it with my left arm. And that was The God in the Well by Bo XTT? Boxt? I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm so sorry. I'll do my best. Correct me. You're absolutely allowed to correct me. So, this is another fantastic example of a story that kind of turns a concept on its head, right? It changes an idea that is it's so I've got to speak about it in a term of like religious doctrine, even though I'm not exactly the most well versed in that kind of a field. I'm not exactly the most religious person myself, but I do understand the concept of worshiping somebody higher than you and everything like that. So yet again, this kind of turns that concept on its head, and it's always a thing that I find really interesting to be played with. The fact that like, well, what if your God isn't helping you? Would you turn to a different God, right? But then again, it's also brings in the idea of a false God and all this stuff, which then makes me think, well, in this case, a lot of these stories like to be like, oh, it's God who turns out to be like the devil or something like that. But in this case, I don't think that's quite it. I think it's just yet again a creature that has been referred to as a god, but he in and of himself doesn't make it sound like he is a god. Maybe for all we know, maybe he's a different concept of a god, maybe a different version of a god, maybe there's more than one type of god, for example, like demigods and stuff like that. We can go on all day talking the semantics about how this kind of works, but either way, we're talking about a god level entity, right? Let's go with that kind of terminology. And it's always interesting because you've got this idea that your god is not helping you. Would you then turn to a different God who would help you? Right? Obviously, people want to have their prayers answered. They obviously want to be heard and be helped, right? And so sometimes if you have that opportunity, you might take it. I can completely understand that logic behind that. The problem is you're also taking, it's a big leap of faith, isn't it? You're fully trusting something that you have zero context for. You don't know how it works. You don't know what you're going to get out of it. You don't know if it's a monkey's paw type situation or in like a gin, for example, where you'll get what you want, but there's a price for it, right? Which is essentially what's happened here as well. And it's this awesome concept of like for years and years and years, everything was fine, everything was normal. Anybody who was helped by this god in the well, things were fine until all of a sudden the hunger happens, and then it becomes this like Frankenstein amalgamation of pulling all these body parts that it has healed. It's basically been able to like, oh yeah, I'm gonna help you, but it's borrowed time, right? And then pulls all the things together to form its own body, which has extra arms and extra body parts and stuff, I guess, because yet again, it just depends on who came to the well and blah, blah, blah. But inevitably, it needed at least a minimum amount of certain things to be able to form itself, and it just so happened to have extras, which then makes it more of a horrific abomination. Like I said, it makes me think of like a Frankenstein monster, right? Because yet again, Frankenstein's monster was it's a bunch of parts of different people put together, so therefore it doesn't look, it's humanoid, but it's wrong, right? Like it's not meant to be existing, right? Which is horrific to say when you really think about the monster, because it's not the monster's fault that it is that way. And I guess that's kind of similar here, but the God in the Well obviously knows what it's doing, and it lures its victims. And the fact that Taylor's super into it, maybe they have a deal going or something, right? Maybe the God in the Well is inevitably going to try to, I don't know, kill humankind or something, right? Like, I guess a lot of evil creatures do. We're assuming this is an evil creature. And maybe in exchange, Taylor will be spared or something, right? That's what I feel about that situation. Otherwise, it's good. It's interesting, and it does make me ponder the questions of like, would people go against their faith to do something like this? It's a really interesting conversation. So down in the comments below, I'd really like to hear from you. I'd really like your idea and your perspective on how this might work in your world, in your way. Because for me, I don't know if I would trust it. But then again, I mean, I also have a horror-oriented mindset. Like, I understand that there are a lot of red flags about situations, and the thing is, I look at that shit and I'm like, yeah, I know I shouldn't be fucking with that. But I feel like there'll be plenty of people who would, right? So, let me know down in the comments below your thoughts, your ideas, how this made you feel. Maybe other things that it might have made you think of, for example, other movies, shows, and stuff like that. Because yeah, yet again, the only one that really comes to mind is Frankenstein's monster, but that's just because yet again, it's an amalgamation of different body parts of different people coming together to create a monster, which is sad. It is a sad story, really, when you break it down. Otherwise, yeah, I don't really know what else I related to. I guess there is the other story I covered about the well, about a darkness that came from a well, but it's not exactly the same thing. I'll go ahead and put a link in the I think it's like a little info card or something like that to it if you want to check out that story. It's a good little story. I did quite enjoy that one. It was like a crack team in the desert and stuff. It was really cool. But yeah, I liked the story a lot. It was great because yet again it makes you think, and I love that kind of shit. I love anything that makes you think. It's great. What the fuck was he? What is that entity? Maybe it's based on true mythology or something like that. In which case, I'd like a little bit more info. If somebody could clue me in, that'd be fantastic. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Nate at Night, and I'll see you next time. Take care out there. The Beckoning Call of Black Hollow. I never should have taken that job. When I answered the email from Black Hollow Forestry, I figured it was just another remote surveying gig. A week alone in a deep, uncharted section of Appalachian wilderness, taking soil samples and marking potential logging zones. Easy money. I'd done it a dozen times before. But Black Hollow wasn't on any map. And by the time I realized that, I was already too far in to turn back. The helicopter dropped me off at the coordinates late in the afternoon. Just me, my pack, and my radio. The pilot, a wiry man with too many scars for someone who supposedly just flew transport, didn't even cut the engine as I stepped out. "You sure you want to do this?" he shouted over the roar of the blades. "Yeah, just a week of peace and quiet." He didn't laugh. Instead, he shoved a battered old compass into my hand. "Your GPS won't work past sundown," he said. "Use this to get out, and if you hear anything at night, don't answer it." Before I could ask what the hell he meant, he was gone. The first day was uneventful. The trees here were old. Wrongly old. Some of them didn't match the native species found in Appalachia. Thick, moss-choked things with twisting black roots that looked more like veins than wood. The deeper I went, the stranger it got. I found bones in places where nothing larger than a squirrel should be. Elk skulls wedged between tree branches. Rib cages split open and picked clean, left sitting in the center of winding deer trails. And then, as the sun dipped below the horizon, my GPS flickered and died. I wasn't worried at first. I had the compass, and my tent was already set up. But that first night, as I lay in my sleeping bag, I heard something moving just beyond the tree line. Not walking, mimicking. A soft shuffling, like bare feet against dead leaves. Then silence. A second later, I heard my own voice whispering from the dark. "Hello?" My stomach turned to ice. I stayed still, barely breathing. The voice repeated, slightly closer this time. "Hello?" Exactly the same cadence, the same intonation. Like a perfect recording. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to remain silent. My hand drifted toward my hatchet, the only weapon I had. The voice called out again, but I refused to answer. After what felt like hours, the footsteps retreated. The forest went back to its natural stillness. I didn't sleep. The next few days blurred together in a haze of exhaustion. The deeper I went, the worse the feeling of being watched became. At one point, I found my own boot prints in the mud, miles from where I had been. On the fifth night, the whispers started again. But this time it wasn't just my voice. It was my mother's, my father's, voices of people I knew, people who had no reason to be in the middle of nowhere, calling to me in the dead of the night. "Help me. It hurts. Please, Just come see. I clenched my teeth so hard I thought they'd crack. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Then, from just outside my tent, so close I could hear its breath, came a new voice. A harrowing one. We see you. I broke camp before dawn, moving faster than I ever had before. I didn't care about the contract, about the samples. I just needed to leave. But the forest had changed. The trees were wrong, twisting at impossible angles. The sky never fully brightened, remaining a murky, overcast gray. The compass spun uselessly in my palm. The whispers continued, always just behind me. Then, around noon, I saw it. A clearing opened ahead, bathed in dim, stagnant light. In the center stood a figure. It was tall. Too tall. Its limbs were elongated, its fingers tapering to needle-like points. Its head was wrong. An almost human face stretched over something that wasn't a skull. And it was smiling. Not with its mouth. Its entire face was smiling, skin shifting in ways that made my stomach churn. And then it spoke. Not aloud, inside my head. You are leaving. It wasn't a question. It was a command. I stumbled backward, nodding frantically. My feet barely touched the ground as I turned and ran. I didn't look back. The helicopter was already waiting for me at the extraction point. The pilot didn't say a word as I climbed in, breathless and shaking. We lifted off, the dense canopy swallowing the clearing below. Only then did I glance back. They were all there. Figures, dozens of them, standing in the shadows just beyond the trees. Watching. Not chasing, not waving. Just watching. The pilot must have seen them too, because he tightened his grip on the controls. As the forest shrank into the distance, he finally spoke. You didn't answer them, did you? I shook my head. He nodded, satisfied. Good. Then quieter. They don't like it when you answer. I never went back. The paycheck was wired to my account a week later, but Black Hollow Forestry no longer existed. No website, no records, no proof that I had ever been hired. But I still have the compass. It doesn't point north anymore. And sometimes, in the dead of night, it spins. And that was The Beckoning Call of Black Hollow by Penguin Monk. Classic. Great name. It reminds me of so whenever I play D&D with my buddy DM Josh, one of the specific soundtracks he always likes to go to, it's got a lot of like dark somewhat fantasy music, and it's always got penguins. Like there's penguin monks, there's like penguin knights and stuff. It's so funny. Anyway, moving on. So this story is short, but that is not a bad thing. Not a bad thing at all, because it hits just right. This is a fantastic example of utilizing every single moment, right? This story is so good because you've got crazy mystery stuff going on. You got a weird organization that loves to disappear off the map. You've got a place that nobody's really ever heard of. You got just rules that don't really make any sense. You've got weird entities that are fucking with you. It's just perfect. Every single little thing you like about a weird fucking story, this is it. It's so good. And yet again, when it comes to the entity, the threats, if you will, in this, it's maybe they're not exactly threats, right? Maybe they're just kind of trying to protect their home or whatever. But you've got some kind of a mimicking creature going on. Could be like a Wendigo, could be like a skinwalker, could be a doppelganger weirdo situation. You might have some kind of an eldritch deer god weird thing going on for all I know. No matter what, fucking sweet. It's so good. It's so good. And the mimicry obviously always makes me think of obviously like weird birds as well, because there's a fair bit of mimicking going on in that, which is yet again it's just a horrifying thought, the fact that something out there that most likely will kill you can also mimic you. It's just creepy as fuck, right? No matter how you look at it, think about these kind of things, it's just too much. But no, I mean, there's really not much to say about this story. Honestly, it's only praise. This is it's great. I don't really see any issues with it. I don't see anything that felt wrong or bad. There's plenty of good little details. Nothing too much that kind of bogs down. No, it's It's just right. It's just right. I've super really enjoyed that. Let's see. Things it makes me think of. So it makes me think of oh god, what was the movie I'm thinking of? It's I think it's called The Ritual. It's a movie on I think it might still be on Netflix, I'm not entirely sure. But it's about a couple guys who end up having this this trip that ends up in the woods and they find like a spooky cabin and stuff like that, and things go horribly wrong. It's not exactly the same kind of a premise, but it does make me think of that because yet again, you're going into a forested area, things don't really act normal, things go very wrong. Fantastic little movie. You know what else makes me think of Woodlands National Park, the super creepy, weird forest rangery analog horror question mark series on YouTube. Honestly, if you haven't seen those, really, really good, really fun, totally worth a watch. Definitely makes me think of that. Actually, the more I really think about it, great comparison. Let me know what it made you think of down in the comments below. Let me know if it made you think of a movie or a TV show or a book or anything that, if I haven't heard about them, I want to hear about them. I want to know what kind of stuff you're into. I want to know these great horror stories and every kind of medium they come in. Honestly, fantastic stuff. Thank you so much yet again, Pegwood Monk, for this opportunity for reading this story out loud to everybody. And thank you all so much for watching. I've been Nate at Night. I've had a great time, and I sure hope you have too. We'll see you for whatever's next. Take care. Since we moved to our new house, my girlfriend thinks we are being watched. It all started when I bought my first ever house. I was in my late 20s, so you can imagine how happy I was. It was a beautiful house in the suburbs. The outside walls were made of exposed brick, something I personally like a lot. And there was plenty of space. 2 bedrooms, both of them with double beds. A modern kitchen, a big living room, 2 bathrooms, a basement, and an attic. My girlfriend at the time was uncertain about whether she should move in with me or not, since she'd have to quit her job. I found this house on Facebook at a surprisingly cheap price, but since it looked good, I didn't think much before sending a message to the realtor. We visited the house a few days later, and I was certain about buying it before even entering. The realtor was nice to me and showed me around, telling me all about the inside of the house. He asked me a few questions, like if I'd live alone, if I had children, if I was new in town. It seemed a little bit too personal, but I thought he was just making conversation. The house was furnished, so I asked if I'd have to pay for all the furniture, but he told me that the previous owners left it behind after a divorce and the laziness to decide who takes what. I hope to achieve this level of richness someday. The basement was kind of small and had a bunch of old things like empty food cans on a metal shelf and boxes filled with school books. The realtor told me about a mouse and spider infestation down here and how none of the owners ever managed to fix it. I didn't care at all and doubted I'd even come down here. When we got upstairs, I noticed something. There were cameras around the house. I asked the realtor about it, and he assured me the cameras never worked and were installed by one of the first residents who had 3 kids. Again, I didn't mind, especially when he pointed to some cut and bare wires hanging from the cameras. I ended up buying it and even received a first house discount, as the realtor called. I was so happy. I quickly brought some of the furniture I had at my parents' house and moved here. My girlfriend ended up joining me after some weeks, and that looked like the perfect house to start a family in. We were loving the experience of living together. She'd make us lunch, I'd make us dinner. We had a good sleep every night. When we lived with our parents, both of us had single beds, which made sleeping together kind of uncomfortable, and made our own rules. Everything was lovely, until our third week living there. My girlfriend woke me up in the middle of the night, saying she heard a noise downstairs. I got up and lit our bedroom light, trying to calm her down. She was positive she heard something that sounded like a knock on a window. Me, as the supportive boyfriend, got downstairs to prove her that there was nothing to worry about. It was a tree branch. I started laughing and even took a video of the sound it made. I showed her that she didn't need to be paranoid, and that I'd always protect her, even from a tree branch. I caressed her head until we both fell asleep. I knew nothing was up, but for some reason, I felt that she kept trying to convince me that it wasn't just a tree branch. After that night, some of my things started to go missing, like a single sock, some ties, my deodorant, and even some of my underwear. I knew she was the one hiding them, so I didn't say anything, because if I looked concerned, she'd win this little game. Another night, my girlfriend woke me up, but this time she heard footsteps nearby our bedroom, and I told her it was nothing, but she insisted. I, again, got up and opened our bedroom door. Nothing was there, but after I showed her the empty corridor, We both heard footsteps coming from the first floor. She started screaming and crying, and even hid under the bed. I locked our door and quickly got downstairs, turning all the lights on and examining every part of the house. Again, I found nothing. I got upstairs and asked her what was that all about. She ended up confessing that when she was a child, 3 men broke into her house and kept her whole family hostage while they stole a bunch of things, and even threatened to kill them if they didn't shut up. One of the men held a gun to my girlfriend's head. That's where all the trauma comes from. I held her close and promised that this would never happen to us. The next day, I called a locksmith to install 2 more locks in the front and back door, an alarm system to warn us if anyone came nearby the house, and even put bars in every window to prevent anyone from breaking in. All of this made my girlfriend feel safer, and it showed. I think everything went clean after I installed all of that. Some things kept going missing, but I was probably being inattentive. Since my girlfriend stopped listening to things inside the house at night, she's a lot more happy and hopeful about starting our family in this house. I love her so much. We went to the basement to inspect if there was anything we could turn that room to, because it was actually kind of cozy. We only had to throw some things away, like the food in the boxes. She said I could do some kind of man cave since I love playing video games, but I suggested a playroom to our future kids, and she loved the idea. She kissed me on the lips and told me about how excited she was. On that day, I knew I had to make her my wife as soon as possible. I bought the engagement rings and hid the little box they came in inside of a teddy bear I bought my girlfriend on a trip to Paris. It had a zipper on its back, so I just hid the little box inside the foam and put it back to its place. I waited a few days to propose, because I wanted to make something impressive, like go on a trip with her, or take her to the restaurant we met. I think 2 weeks had passed since I bought the rings. Me and my girlfriend were chilling on the couch, almost getting to the finale of Game of Thrones, and I was sleepy as hell. I told her I was almost falling asleep and that she could watch it alone, and she agreed. I made her popcorn before going to bed, and kissed her on the lips goodnight. I woke up with a scream downstairs. My girlfriend's scream, followed by loud steps and finally a door slam. Then silence. I freaked out. I started screaming, calling her. I looked to the living room from the top of the staircase. The popcorn bowl was empty, and there was no sign of her. I called the police immediately, my fingers shaking so much I could barely dial the right number. I sat in the grass in front of my house and waited for them to come. The police came surprisingly quickly. While one of them searched the house, the other asked me about what happened. I had nothing to explain. Someone just kidnapped my girlfriend out of nowhere. That's all I knew. The other officer came near us and told me that there was no sign of a break-in, and asked me if the front door was locked when I came outside to wait for them, to which I said yes. They asked me if she sleepwalked. No. If someone had the keys. No. If someone would have any reason to hurt my girlfriend. No. If someone could be frogging. But that seemed absurd, and I would have noticed by now. After all these questions, they said they had no reason to believe she was abducted, and told me that she could have gotten angry about something I did and wanted to take a break. And if she actually didn't come back soon, I should call them again. They just left. That made my blood boil. Anyone with a brain would realize that no one fucking storms out in the middle of the night. I heard a scream. I heard loud footsteps. Someone must have picked the lock, or maybe someone had a copy of the keys. That didn't make any sense. What if someone was actually inside my house? I took the whole day to search for evidence. A single strand of hair, even. I needed something that could prove I wasn't crazy. I turned every room upside down, even the fucking bathrooms. No sign of anyone other than me and her. I thought I was going insane. Really. I climbed the stairs to the attic. I've never even gone there, so it made my heart pound even faster. It was a dark and claustrophobic room without any windows. I illuminated the room with my cell phone's flashlight, but I couldn't find anything to get concerned with. Just a couple more boxes and furniture covered in plastic. Then, something stood out. A beautiful painting of some dude. There were hearts all around his face, like it had been done by a lover. I started to sob so hard I fell on my knees. What if she did leave me? What if the policemen were right? I got out of the attic and went to the living room once again. I fell on the couch, defeated. I looked at our photographs, hanging on the walls, in photo frames at the side of the TV. I got up to reach the teddy bear from Paris and hugged it like it was her. My heart immediately froze. I couldn't feel the ring box. I opened the zipper on its back and noticed the box and the rings were gone. What the fuck? That changed everything. This wasn't just a fucking coincidence. Someone stole the rings. And I'm sure it wasn't her, because we talked about it. That gave me the gas to keep searching for her. The last stop was the basement. It got even dustier than the last time I came here. I opened the boxes, tried moving some stuff, and examined the floor with my cell phone's flashlight. I looked at every corner, every single part of the ceiling, and when I pointed the flashlight to the metal shelf, I noticed that some parts of it were completely clean, even though most of it was covered by dust. I tried to keep calm. I needed to find my girlfriend. When I squatted to examine the lowest shelf, I saw it. A door. A little door, around 4 feet, looking like it wasn't intended to be found. There were a lot of things on the shelves. That's why I never saw anything. My heart started racing and I felt like I was going to faint at any moment. I moved the shelf to the side and got in front of the door. Since I was almost 6'1", I knew I'd have to crawl. I know this sounds insane. I know I should have just gone upstairs and called the police. But I swear my adrenaline was so spiked I couldn't stop. I opened the little door. When I got up from the floor, my jaw dropped. There was a house inside of that little door. It looked exactly like one of those studio apartments. There was a bed, a small kitchen, a TV, a couch, a horizontal freezer, and a separate room that was probably a bathroom. Someone was living inside of my house. All of the walls were filled with pictures of me. All of the walls. Hundreds of pictures. Pictures that I'm asleep. Pictures that I'm naked. Pictures that I'm just walking. Pictures of me smiling. And no pictures of my girlfriend. What the fuck was this? Some kind of sick joke of hers? I actually thought for a second that this was just a prank and that she proposed herself with the rings. For a moment, I felt relieved. Not until I looked behind me. I saw a canvas. A canvas with a painting of me, almost finished, filled with a bunch of hearts, just like the painting I saw in the attic. At that moment, I heard the sound of a toilet being flushed. I ran like crazy towards the little door, not looking back. Someone was coming from that fucking bathroom towards me. I could hear the loud steps just like I heard the night my girlfriend went missing. I crawled and managed to get out of the room, so I kicked the little door and ran to the top of the stairs as quickly as I could. When I looked back, just for a second, I saw his face. He was passing through the little door, looking at me with a giant smile and wide eyes. He was terrifying. I quickly locked the basement door and dialed 911. They came quickly. I didn't hear anything from the basement while I waited, but maybe that's because I was breathing so loud I couldn't even hear my thoughts. The police went to the basement and found him lying on the bed. They took him in handcuffs. He had black, long hair, was completely pale, was really hairy, was around 5'9", and was kind of fat. He had a smile on his face the whole time, and kept staring at me, licking his lips. I was disgusted by that fucking creature. I noticed he was wearing one of the engagement rings I bought. He was the one who stole it. They put him inside of the police car. When I looked at him, I saw he was kissing the blurry window, looking back at me. He kissed it with his white tongue. I threw up on the grass, disgusted. I wanted to kill him with my bare hands. One of the officers came and told me if I knew that the dude had access to the cameras. I told him that the realtor told me they never even worked, but the officer said otherwise. The basement TV showed the view of all the cameras inside the house. And that's why this man always knew what we were doing, and when we were asleep. We realized that the realtor could have something to do with all of this, but that required some more investigation. Some more officers came from the basement carrying what looked like a body, wrapped in plastic. I never prayed so hard that this body was anyone else, but not my girlfriend. I started tearing up when I saw it. I asked to see the body. It was her. My lovely girlfriend, completely frozen. Her body had bloodstains and wounds. I lied on the grass and cried like someone was stabbing me. I should have listened to her when she said something was off about this house. I should have moved out when I had the chance. My whole world was shattered at that moment. Some time has passed since the incident, and my therapist insisted that I should share my story with other people, serving as a way to vent and to warn others. But I want to give this some closure. Turns out this man has done this multiple times. The police found evidence of more than 3 crimes on his part of the basement. He always fell in love with the man and killed the girlfriend/wife, and I sincerely don't know how the police never found him. The killer was presumed dead when he was only 10 years old. Apparently died in a car accident with his parents, since the police report said that his brother was the only survivor. He was living there for more than 30 years. And you know who knew about this? The realtor. His own brother. He was the one attracting victims so that his psycho brother could have some fun. Funny thing is, I didn't even mention that my girlfriend would move in. Does that mean he just wanted to kill me? Seduce me? I have no clue, and never will. Also, the realtor ran away when his brother got arrested and is still missing to this day. I still blame myself for it. I still wish I'd done it all differently. So here I am, opening myself to a bunch of strangers online. I only have a few lessons to share with you, and take them seriously. Always suspect good properties at a ridiculously low price. And above all, listen to what your partner has to say, and take them seriously. If I believed what my girlfriend had to say, she could still be here with me. And that was, since we moved to our new house, my girlfriend thinks we are being watched by Aromatic Advisor 9197. I didn't know aromatics needed advisors, but you know what? At least we know one now. I like it. So this is it's certainly a fear that I'm aware of. I mean, it's not exactly like a hidden thing these days. I mean, there's tons of videos online, especially of people that are squatting inside of your house without your knowledge of it, right? I'm sure I'll find a specific reference video I'm talking about, the one that specifically like really spooked me, that ended up being like quite a big news story if I remember right. But it's just a horrifying thought. I mean, whether they're going to kill you or not is a whole extra level of the fear, right? It truly, truly is, because it's one thing if they live in your house and they're just trying to live, right? Not even trying to mess with you, just completely go off the radar, right? That's horrific in and of itself. The fact that there is somebody secretly living inside your house that you may never find. And then also, what if they die in there? There's so many things about it that could just go wrong, that could be horrifying. And yet again, obviously they also have to get food, so they tend to come out when you're usually asleep and take stuff of yours. It's awful on so many levels, and it's terrifying, it's horrifying. I mean, and yeah, yet again, they can also, in a lot of the cases, they might try to kill the actual homeowners or something. It's horrible, right? It's just it, it always makes a great story. I'm glad it's fiction, but still, it makes a great story. And this story is told really, really well. I really had some great chills reading this one, and I super enjoyed it. It's a great classic setup of really cheap house. What's the problem with it? Certainly some bizarreness here and there, but nothing too much of a red flag that clearly was. I mean, yeah, I suppose if you're looking at this from a horror story perspective, of course it's all red flags, isn't it? But in the real world, especially if you're kind of struggling, and this could be the thing that you needed exactly at the right moment, you might see it as a sign from like a higher power or something like that. The universe is rewarding you for all your hard work and stuff. So you might not see the red flags truly well, right? You might see them as pink or off red or something like that, or maybe it's smaller than you think. But I mean, like his morals at the end of the story, it's true. You should. I think a better way to describe it is you should trust your gut. You know, if you have a gut feeling that something is not right, there's a chance there's truth to that. It might not be 100% true, but there's usually a level of truth to that, and you should absolutely listen to it. You know, and he's right about listening to your partner as well. Obviously, you should do that anyway. You should have a good communication with your partner. You should be open and honest, and you should be able to believe each other. Right? 100% agree with that. This story is great, especially the fact that the realtor's in on it. But I mean, that makes it even easier for this whole shenanigans to happen. It's so well done. It's so well done. It's horrifying. I loved every minute of it. I loved every minute of it. This was a great story. I've super enjoyed reading this one. So this actually reminds me of I'm pretty sure the movie's called Parasite. right? That's the first thing that came to my mind about this story because it's in Parasite, it's this poor family, and they inevitably are able to kind of they work for other people and especially richer people in order to make money, but in a way they also scam them and con them to better themselves. And at one point, like some of the family starts living secretly inside the rich people's house. It's so it's a crazy movie. It is a crazy good movie. If you haven't seen it, oh, what are you doing? It's a great thriller. It's psychologically weird. There's so many suspenseful there's so many weird things about that story. It's so good. It's so good. Definitely watch it if you haven't seen it. Let's see. When it comes to like TV shows or books or anything like that, nothing else is super coming to mind. Parasite immediately jumped out to me. That was a big one. But like I said earlier in this, I'm sure I've probably put up a little snippet clip of the maybe even the story article about the lady who was living in somebody's house. It's just creepy as fuck. It's just a creepy thought. No matter who you are, it's just oh it's creepy. It's definitely a creepy thing. I don't like it, but it does allow me to open up topics of conversation and discussion. So if you've ever had one of these situations happen to you, or you know somebody who has, you should let me know down in the comments below because I'd really like to hear the story. I'd really like to hear the story. That'd be really, really cool. Might even make a video about it if you're really lucky. I think that'd be great. Or if for some crazy reason somebody watching this is one of those people who has lived in somebody else's house without their permission or knowing, I want to hear your story. Let me know down in the comments below. I'd really like to know. Really like to know some weird stories that come out of this. What are your thoughts about this? Do you think it's horrifying? Are you as scared of it as I am? I think it's horrifying as shit. I think it's terrible. I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know what to do if I found out that somebody was living in my house. It'd be fucking creepy as shit. Oof. Yeah. Let me know what you thought of the story. Let me know. Let me know how you're doing. How's your day? Anything down in the comments below. This has been a great read, and I've super enjoyed myself, and I sure hope you have too. Do you like the new setup? I've still got to get like the green screen setup and things like that, but got like a little tea coffee shelf up here. I think that's gonna be quite nice. Got a window next to me. This is also where I'm gonna be doing some live streams with Jordan when we do the Friday stuff. Got a couple more things to kind of work out, but we're mostly there. Mostly there. It's a good little setup. This has been really fun. Thank you yet again, Aromatic Advisor 9197 for the story. This has been awesome. All right, everybody. You take care out there. My neighbor keeps talking to someone who isn't there. Last night, I heard them answer back. I moved into this neighborhood at the end of January. I was looking for quiet, space, and, if I'm being honest, a reset. I'd just left the city after a breakup, a burnout, and a year I'd rather not relive. The town I landed in isn't the kind that shows up in travel guides. It's the kind with rusted out mailboxes, lawn flamingos, and the faint sound of a radio playing from someone's garage. My house is small, just 2 bedrooms and a porch that creaks when I lean on the railing. But it's mine. And for the first time in a while, I felt like I could breathe again. That feeling lasted all of 2 weeks. The first time I noticed Mr. Talbot, it was raining. I was drinking coffee at the window, watching the street disappear behind streaks of water, when I caught sight of him across the road. He was standing in his living room, perfectly still, staring directly out his front window. His lights were off. No TV, no movement. Just him in the dark behind him. I waved. Instinct, I guess. But he didn't respond. Just turned and walked out of sight. I figured he didn't see me. Or maybe he was hard of hearing. Or maybe he just didn't care. I mean, people keep to themselves out here. That's part of the appeal, right? Still, after that, I started noticing more. Every evening, just after the street lights buzzed to life, Mr. Talbot would settle into the same old armchair near his window. Same spot, same time. Always facing the corner of the room, where there was nothing. No TV, no bookshelves, just a blank wall and a dusty lamp that never turned on. And every night, I'd see his lips move. Slow, deliberate, like he was explaining something. At first, I assumed he was talking to someone on the phone. Maybe an old friend, maybe his wife, if he had one. But I never saw anyone come in or out of that house. No visitors, no cars in the driveway, not even a dog or cat wandering around inside. Just Mr. Talbot, alone, talking to someone I couldn't see. I tried to ignore it, told myself it wasn't my business. Maybe he was just eccentric, or maybe it helped him feel less alone. But about a week ago, something changed. It was around 11 p.m., later than I usually stay up. I couldn't sleep, too many thoughts running in circles, so I sat by the window, sipping on lukewarm tea, and glanced across the street out of habit. Mr. Talbot was in his chair again. Only this time, he wasn't talking. He was listening. His head tilted slightly to one side, like a child watching a puppet show. His eyes were locked on that same blank corner of the room, and his mouth hung open, like he was in awe or fear. I couldn't tell which. I squinted through the glass, trying to see if maybe someone was there. Maybe he finally had company. That's when he nodded, slowly, twice, then leaned forward in his chair and whispered something I couldn't hear. He stayed like that for maybe 10 minutes, then stood up, walked out of the room, and didn't return. I waited, maybe 15 minutes, maybe more. Then finally, I gave up and went to bed. I told myself to stop watching him. It felt wrong, invasive. But you know how your brain fixates on something? Like a loose thread you just have to tug? Last night, I tugged the thread, and it unraveled. I didn't plan to watch him again. I told myself I was done. But sometime around 10:30, I found myself back at the window. No tea, no excuse. Just standing there like a moth drawn to something I didn't understand. Mr. Talbot's house was dark. No porch light, no living room lamp, just the dim glow of a street light casting long shadows across his lawn. But he was there. I could make out the silhouette of his armchair, his figure, that same tilt of his head, facing the corner. He was talking again. I leaned in, pressing my forehead lightly to the glass. I didn't even realize I was holding my breath. Then something shifted. His posture changed. His shoulders pulled back like he was startled. His hands gripped the arms of the chair, and slowly, too slowly, he turned his head toward the window. Toward me. Our eyes met. At least, I think they did. The distance made it hard to tell. But I felt it, like a pinprick behind my eyes. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking through me. And then he smiled. It wasn't warm. It wasn't polite. It was the kind of smile you see in dreams that make you wake up cold and sweating. He lifted one hand and pointed. Not at the corner, not at the window. At me. Then, I swear, I heard it. Not through the glass, not through the air, but somewhere else. Inside. A voice. Low, calm, familiar, in the way a shadow under your bed is familiar. It said, "He sees you." My legs buckled. I stumbled backward, heart pounding so hard I thought I might black out. When I scrambled to the window again, the chair was empty. Mr. Talbot was gone. The light flicked on a second later. Nothing moved. I haven't slept since. This morning, I watched the house all through sunrise. No sign of him. No signs of life at all. But something tells me I wasn't supposed to see that. And I'm starting to think Mr. Talbot wasn't talking to someone who isn't there. He was warning them. About me. I haven't seen Mr. Talbot since that night. His chair's still there. His lights still flicker on at sunset. But the man himself? Gone. I keep thinking about that voice. About what it said. He sees you. I used to think I was the one watching him. But now, I'm not so sure I ever was. And that was My Neighbor Keeps Talking to Someone Who Isn't There. Last night, I heard The Men's Are Back by Sticky Boots 4. So, first off, I need to have a big shout out for Sticky Boots. So you see, most cases for me to find stories and everything, I have to do a lot of traveling through Reddit. I have to send quite a lot of messages out, get permission, everything like that. Don't always hear back from people. This one's a little special, though. So you see, on April 21st, so this is like super recent, I actually got an email from Sticky Boots, and it says, "Hey Nate, just wanted to let you know of this post on r/no sleep that I posted. I really like your videos, and I've been watching you for about 2 years, it feels like. Anyway, I was just hoping that you could do a video on my post, as it would be a dream come true. Here's the link," which obviously then the story that we read. "I hope to see my post on your channel one day. And it's okay if you don't want to post about it, I get it. I know that you have better posts to get to." Not always true. "Even if you don't, at least write me back to let me know. Thank you, Sticky Boots." Well, Sticky Boots, I did respond to the email, naturally, as I'm sure he would have seen at this point. This was a great little story. This definitely deserved covering. So let's kind of jump into some of the nitty-gritty of my thoughts. It's an interesting story. Not a massive amount of detail about who our main character is, but that's okay. That happens a lot in these kind of stories. Nothing wrong with that. I'm so curious, right? So naturally, the main problem is the fact that Mr. Talbot is able to interact with something, someone, some entity, whatever you want to define it as, that can't be seen. Maybe he can see it though. Maybe he can't. We don't obviously know that information. But it initially made me think of things like the movie Sixth Sense, the fact that it's like, oh, I see dead people, seeing ghosts, but nobody else can. The Shining, another great example of being able to communicate with people who aren't actually there or are dead, which maybe is what's going on here. We're not entirely sure. It also made me think of like It Follows, the fact that like only the person who was affected by the I don't know if I remember it being called a disease or a curse or something, they can see whatever's coming to kill them, but nobody else can, right? So could be something along those kind of premises. That's just what it made me think of anyway. So it could be a ghost, it could be a demon, it could be some other kind of horrific monstrosity that we're not really aware of. Could be like a nightmare manifestation or something. We don't really know. All we know is that Mr. Talbot is able to interact with whatever this is. But then it gets weird with the question, right? What's he doing? Because for the most part, just observing Mr. Talbot, it seems like they're just having an interaction, like they're talking. Not really planning or plotting that we're aware of. It just looks like it's fairly casual based on the mannerisms that go on in the situation. It's a little odd, sure. But I suppose, especially if you're an old man, it's not like you can, go on a coffee date with the thing, right? So then it definitely gets really weird. It definitely gets really weird beyond that, right? So first off, that's great. That's creepy. It's weird. It's a great way to like spy on somebody and find out that they're really strange. For all we know, they're just seeing absolutely nothing. It's all made up in their head. Could be. But then Mr. Talbot points to our main character, right? And then the main character hears a voice, somewhere near them even. Maybe even in the same room or something like that, right? And they said it was familiar. The voice was familiar, which is certainly weird. Why would it be familiar? Familiar like the creature under your bed familiar? I'm not very familiar with that guy. I'm really not. Familiar makes me think like, maybe you're not friendly, but you're like acquaintances, right? You know of them. You've probably had a few conversations with them. You're familiar with them, right? Are you familiar with the creature under your bed? Is there something you really need to tell us about, Sticky Boots? Is there a monster under your bed? If so, can you let me know? That'd be really cool. So what's going on? And then Mr. Talbot disappears. Why does he disappear? Is he just an extension of this entity? A scout, perhaps? Why is the main character so important? There's still a level of information that isn't quite answered, right, or explained. And nobody really dies, but somebody is being observed. That much is apparent, right? But we don't know what for. We don't know what purpose. And that's okay. Mystery is always good, in my opinion. It's always good to maybe it lets you ask questions. It lets you think. You could draw your own conclusions, maybe. Maybe you can't. I love that kind of stuff. I think there's nothing wrong with having mystery and bizarreness. There's plenty of good information here. Could there be more detail? Sure. Not really an issue, in my opinion. Great little story. Great little story, in my opinion. I really enjoyed it. I really, really did. So yeah, yet again, this made me think of the movie Sixth Sense. It made me think of obviously The Shining, things I brought up before anyway. And yeah, no, it's been super, super awesome. And I've really enjoyed getting to read this. A fantastic submission by our boy Sticky Boots. Thank you yet again, my dude. This has been an absolute pleasure. If anybody wants to, send me stories that I should also cover and read, as long as with permission, naturally, that's obviously how that works. If it's not your story, for example, then I have to go get permission. So, if it is your story, cool. Then we could talk. In which case, you can always send me the submission at natedognarrates@gmail.com. Or when I've got the Reddit community up and running, which I'm hoping to do by May. I don't know. We'll kind of see. It really depends. Got a couple of things I got to sort out first. Then you can always submit stories there. That's going to be part of the thing. It's going to be really fun. Really cool. Anyway, I've been Nate at Night. I've had a fantastic time, and I sure hope you have too. We will see you for whatever's next. Take care out there. Something keeps playing with my light switch. So, as a kid, I sometimes heard the sound of someone playing with a light switch. The light would remain the same. It wasn't like everything went dark and came back. It was just the sound. I would lie in bed, and then 2 quick taps on the light switch would be heard. Then nothing. You might think since I was a kid, it was probably just my imagination. However, I remembered being worried enough to bring this up with my dad. He excused it with, "We have mice in the attic, nothing to worry about." However, the sounds continued well into my teens. I could have had headphones on, playing video games, listening to music, or whatever, and I would still hear that quick 1-2 tap on the light switch. It didn't occur frequently, but just enough time would pass between the sounds for me to forget about it and quickly be reminded of it. I didn't have any siblings, and my parents didn't find pranks very funny, so I didn't believe it could be anyone messing with me. Plus, if my parents, who could barely work a TV remote, figured out a way for me to hear that 1-2 tap sound through headphones, props to them. Moving on. When I was about 15, I started imagining all types of explanations. Maybe it was mice, like my dad said. Or maybe it was something with the electricity. Or after I started watching horror movies, demons messing with me. A month after my birthday, I bought a pair of knockoff AirPods. The sound quality was pretty good for such a cheap price. Either way, they came in this hard plastic case. I swore to God this thing would have been just as effective as a brick in a fight. I kept it at my desk so I could fiddle with it. As any kid around that age, I was super into video games. Mostly competitive first-person shooters. I mostly kept quiet, but when my parents weren't home, I would be screaming like a banshee, swearing, screaming insults, the entire ordeal. One day, I was home alone. My dad was working an afternoon shift, and my mom was out of town at some marketing conference. Quick side note for people who had never been around anyone who knew anything about marketing. All they did was sit around and complain about how this ad sucked and that other ad could be better. Back to the story. I was home alone, playing video games. I heard the 1-2 tap sound of the light switch, but didn't think much of it. I was used to it at this point. At a certain point in the game, I got angry and started swearing at my teammates for not going A with me. I ended up dying that round. This made me so angry that I picked up the knockoff AirPods case and threw it at the wall behind me. The case bounced off the wall, causing a lot more damage than I had anticipated. "Fuck," I said, then tilted my head back inside. When I tilted my head back down and looked at the golf ball-sized hole that was now in my wall, I saw a flicker of something blue. I didn't think anything of it. In retrospect, I really wished I had. I exited the game. I would have lost anyway. I went to inspect the damage further. "Dad is going to be so pissed," I whispered. I put my finger into the hole. Not sure why, but I think that was a pretty normal reaction when having damaged something. Anyway, as I put my finger into the hole, I could feel that the wall was pretty thick with a lot of space. I had long skeleton fingers, and I could easily put my entire finger in without being close to touching the other side. As I wiggled my finger around for a second, I felt hot air blowing in intervals on my finger. Then something warm and slimy wrapped all around it, like sticking your finger in a warm piece of raw chicken. I recoiled and threw myself back, landing on my ass. Panting and quick scurrying could be heard coming from the wall. "What the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck?" I whispered in a panic. I grabbed my phone and ran down the stairs terrified. I picked up my phone, called my dad, and tried to explain the best I could what had happened. Needless to say, my dad left his work as he heard how scared I was. He then took one look at the wall, said that I was full of shit, and scolded me for putting a hole in the wall. That night, I pleaded with him that I could sleep on the couch in the living room because I was too terrified to sleep in my room. My dad was still pissed about the wall, and the couch had become his new bed when my mom was away. He was not ready to give that up. My dad took my PC's power cable and forced me to go to bed early that day. I could see the hole in the wall from my bed, and I was mortified. I was waiting for something to walk by or a tongue to poke through the hole. After about an hour of being unable to sleep and just staring at the hole in the wall, I remembered an old Hunger Games poster I had that I had never put up. I searched my closet, found it, and quickly taped it up. I fell asleep within the next hour. I woke up the next day, feeling extremely bad due to the lack of sleep and nightmares. I turned around and looked at the wall. Something had poked through the fucking poster. There was a hole in my fucking poster. It was watching me. I was wide awake in a second and rushed out of my room and down the stairs, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I tried to tell my dad again. He didn't believe me again. When I tried showing him the poster, all he said was, "Why would you ruin a poster of Jennifer Lawrence? I thought all teenage boys liked pretty women." Then went back to ignoring my pleas for help. At this point, I knew my dad would not help me, and my mother was gone for another week. I tried to come up with some sort of plan to get my dad to believe me. I can already hear some of you saying, "Film it," and I would have if I could. I dropped my phone a couple of weeks before this, and it had cracked the lens of the camera, making it unusable. I'm sure you all could have devised a better plan than I did. I planned to get a hammer from the garage and simply wait. I was going to wait for the 1-2 tap sound to throw the hammer as hard as I could at the wall, hopefully hitting something. Anytime I was in my room, I made sure I had the hammer close by. I slept with it and had it in my lap or my hands at all times. I let my now ruined poster remain on the wall. Each day as I tried to sleep, I stared at the hole in the wall, scared as ever. And each night I saw that blue flicker. After 3 days, my dad gave me back my PC's power cable. I started playing video games immediately, wanting to distract myself. I had the hammer in my lap, and then I heard it. The 1-2 tap of the light switch. I grabbed the hammer, swung myself around, and threw it as hard as I possibly could at the wall. I could never, in a million years, have replicated that throw. The hammer spun in the air, and the head of the hammer hit the wall perfectly, crashing through it. I'm going to describe the following events as clearly as I can. Whatever was behind the wall screamed. The scream was hard to describe. It sounded like a prehistoric beast with a throat infection. It started clawing at the walls, and limbs soon after came crashing out of the wall. I froze in shock. This thing came crashing out of the wall. It was tall and pale, with limbs reaching down to its inverted knees. Its ribcage was easily visible, and it was unnaturally thin. Its face had rat-like features, with small blue eyes and an elongated jaw. My dad, hearing this bombardment of sound, came running up the stairs and threw my door open. The apple didn't fall far from the tree. He also froze in shock. The thing from the walls pounced at my dad, sending him crashing down to the floor. It wasn't attacking. It was trying to flee. I could hear it stumbling, almost falling down the stairs, trying to get out. At this point, I unfroze. I jumped over my dad, who was lying on the floor on the brink of passing out, and ran after the creature. It had busted the front door wide open. I managed to get a glimpse of it as it was galloping away from the house, at a certain point looking over its shoulder. We moved not soon after that. My mom didn't give much of an explanation. She tried to scold me for the destruction of an entire wall. My dad actually stood up for me and told her that it had collapsed on its own. Me and my dad never talked about it. I think he feels ashamed that he didn't believe me, and I don't think I could have a conversation with him that would make sense of the situation. Since then, both me and my dad would only move into places with paper-thin walls. A bit of a weird requirement, but I think you understand after reading this. I have no idea what happened to the thing in the wall, how long it had lived there, how long it had watched me, what it wanted. There was nothing on the news, and I scoured the internet trying to find anyone with a similar experience. But I found nothing. I hope whatever it is, that it leaves me alone. Leaves everyone alone. Or at least, doesn't make itself known again. Am I ready? I think so. And that was Something Keeps Playing with My Light Switch by Benin. Man, that name, that I always love repetition or alliteration of certain things. It just makes me feel so good. It's just nice, right? But I do have to say that your name has made me it's reminded me of a biscuit. I remember there was an advert for it when I was a kid, and they probably still do the same theme tune as well, like little jingle, but it was called BN, right? And so the tune was always BN do 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 do. It was
BN, 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 BN.
It was great. They always had a cute little jingle for their adverts. It just, yeah, reminded me of that because of this. BN. That's funny. Anyway, anyway, let's go ahead and talk about the story. Yet another short story. Never really a bad thing though, right? Never really a bad thing because it's got a good amount of intrigue to it, and yet again, it's a problem that could happen in real life. Obviously, with levels of you know, like unbelievable stuff like a humanoid rat boy thing, right? Like if it was just a skinny human, whatever, right? Like, oh, malnourished and stuff like that. Kind of makes sense that he's just squatting in the walls and things, right? There's a level of logic that you could apply there that would work in the real world. But obviously because he's got bizarre mutated features, that's obviously the part where it becomes a little bit more supernatural, which isn't a bad thing. I like the fact that the story is steeped in a level of real world thought and logic, and it's a thing. It draws on a fear that I think a lot of people would have about maybe not always being home alone and having an issue, but even when you're not home alone but still having an issue in your own house, right? Where the point of a home is that you're meant to feel safe, right? It's your space and you're safe there. It's got all the comforts you like. You know how essentially everything works in it. I mean, you probably don't know all the specific details of say plumbing and how the electrics work and all that crap, but you understand the essentials that let you survive in your house comfortably. And it's always weird because naturally it reminds me of the fact that like houses, I mean apartments as well, any kind of a structure really can make noises, right? Which a lot of people might be like, "Oh, that's kind of weird." Yeah, but that's just what they do, right? I mean, like knocking sometimes is usually water pipes, for example, or the fact that sometimes like electric certain devices will produce a buzzing sound, or if you have exposed electrics, is an even better example. It can cause this. It can produce like a bit of a field, and it can produce these feelings of paranoia and sometimes nausea. Not usually nausea. It's more paranoia. It makes you feel like you're not alone, like you're being watched, right? But it's just because the electrical interference going on, and that's usually why basements tend to be a lot creepier because there's usually a lot of things down there that run on electrics, and in some cases they've been there a while. They get a little bit more exposed to the world. They don't always have the best shielding and stuff, and that's why those things happen. It's pretty common, So a lot of things are easily explained. But it's always interesting when it turns out that there's truth to a paranoia, right? Because then I don't think you can call yourself paranoid anymore. It's more that you're on alert, right? You're on watch. You're looking for whatever the actual thing is. I think it goes beyond the word paranoia then, right? Because I think paranoia is more steeped in the fact that what you're concerned about probably isn't real, right? Whereas when it is real, I feel like that, yeah, it still kind of falls in paranoia, but there's obviously more merit to it, and it kind of should maybe have a different term. There probably is one for it. I just don't know off the top of my head. Anyway, I'll stop rambling. But I liked the good little bit of suspense, a little bit of intrigue and mystery to the story. It was nice until obviously the creature fell out of the wall. We don't know how long it had been there. We don't know what the fuck it was. It's great, and the fact that even the dad got to see it. But then they still decided to keep it hidden from the mom, and they decided to move. But I'm guessing they didn't disclose any information about what happened in the house. No police investigation or any other thing happened, which that levels of logic that doesn't make sense to me. Because, if there was one creature in your house, one thing that you had never seen before in your entire life, and probably nobody else has in the world, let's say, you'd want to let people know, right? So there could be investigation. There could be more in that house. For all we know, it had babies in the walls or something. We don't fucking know. And we don't know how this thing works. Maybe it just asexually reproduces. We don't know. Is it the only house that has one of these things in it? We don't know. But yet again, it allows your imagination to run wild, right? And I think that's great. I think it's really great. Things that this story made me think about. Actually, quite a few things. So funnily enough, if you Google "people in the walls," there's apparently quite a number of movies and stuff like that, which is to be expected. And I was thinking of specific ones. I was trying to find them, but we'll kind of cover the fact that there's a movie from 2024 called "The People in the Walls," and it has something to do with a trend about inviting people from the walls into your home. Obviously, it's a movie, so it's not real, but still, it's like horror movie logic is always stupid, right? Like, there's a trend online about it makes me think of like the whole Bloody Mary thing, or La Llorona, anything where you have to invite something toward. Well, I mean, maybe not La Llorona, you don't really invite her towards you, but with Bloody Mary, you're trying to invite her into your home. That's I mean, it's obviously probably not real, but it's like, but you still shouldn't, right? Just it's like a Ouija board. You don't do it in your own home. Do it in somebody else's house, right? Let it be their problem. Do it in an abandoned building, a place where if you do release some kind of demonic entity or a spirit, it's stuck there. It's not in your own house. Something fucking stupid, right? So anyway, people in the walls. Yeah, I'll probably end up watching that. That sounds interesting. There's also one called Boy in the Walls, which that sounds like it could be quite interesting. Unable to shake the feeling that someone is always watching her, a new stepmother makes a terrifying discovery after hearing strange noises in her house. Sounds pretty good. I don't recognize any of the actors in it, though, but that's not going to stop me from watching something from 2023. Cool. Might check that out. Let's see. It also reminded me of a scene, I think, and you're welcome to correct me. I think it was in one of the Conjuring movies. But they found, I think, if I remember correctly, Lorraine was in a wall at one point, and she found like evidence of like, I think one of the kids or something like that was playing in the walls. I don't fully remember. I can't. I'm struggling to find the scene even online or an image or anything, which is really weird. But I could have sworn. I could have sworn it was her. I could have sworn it was a Conjuring movie. I could totally be wrong. But that's what I thought. I could very well be wrong. Oh, so we talked about BN. When it comes to the creature, though, it's harder to define, but it does make me think of a couple of different things. Number one off the top of my head is the Skaven out of Warhammer universe. I mean, because they're rat boys, and they come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and deformities. And some of them are true abominations, like hideous, whereas other ones are kind of like, you look at them and you're like, oh, they're goofy little rat boys, like kind of make you think like goblins, except they got crazy technology and I mean goblins can, but they're more magic, whereas Skaven are technology and fucking ridiculous, and some of them become big ogres and things, or like a rat king and stuff. It's just ridiculous, right? Um, it also reminds me that there's a movie. I haven't seen it, but I remember seeing images for it before when I was doing some horror research like a long, long time ago. Because I've always been intrigued in horror, and I was looking for like older horror movies, and it's called Rat Boy. Funnily enough, I'm sure I'll pop a picture up on the screen as well. Haven't seen it, but yeah, just yet another case of somebody who looks like a rat, even though not fully like humanoid with rat features. It's apparently a thriller comedy. Didn't know that. I might have to look into it. Apparently, there's also a Rat Boy similar in a Batman Beyond comic. Quite random, that. Quite random. And then the last thing it really made me think of as well is the 1990 film The Witches, which I remember seeing when I was a kid, and because it's based on a Roald Dahl book, and I grew up with Roald Dahl books because it's just a very very simple European book that you could get as a kid. Book series anyway. Roald Dahl makes tons of them. You got like Willy Wonka the Chocolate Factory is a great example. James the Giant Peach, BFG, just to name a few. And yeah, so the witches, and it's I remember it's technically mice. It's technically mice that they're like I think they're turning children into, if I remember off the top of my head. And I remember there's like this big meeting of them in a hotel, which funnily enough, that hotel is down in Cornwall. I've been to it quite a number of times, and I think it's Falmouth. No, Newquay. Newquay. It's Newquay. I thought it was Falmouth, but I'm pretty sure it's Newquay. Anyway, and yeah, so their scheme is to turn children into mice, and at one point, like the witches kind of get exposed for being witches and not full on human looking, and they have some pretty creepy witchy appearances and stuff like that. But it's just yeah. I might put a picture up. I'm sure I'll probably do that. But yeah, that's just I think they've got they had a remake, didn't they? They had a remake, not a remaster. I think it was a remake in 2020. Haven't seen that one, so they might have similar stuff in it. I haven't really seen it, so I don't know. I think that one had Anne Hathaway, and she had like weird teeth, mouth open. It made me think of like a shark or a big fish or something like that. I don't know. It was really weird. Anyway, I really enjoyed the story. I thought this was totally worth covering, and I've really enjoyed it. And I sure hope you have too. Let me know in the comments down below what else this has made you think of. What else has sparked in your mind about maybe things in a wall, whether it be people or creatures or otherwise. Maybe you've had some bizarre experiences in your own house of things in your walls, or maybe just mysterious noises that you can never explain. That would be interesting. I want to hear about that. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching. I've been Nate at Night. This has been super fun, and I will see you next time. Thank you yet again, Benen. This has been it's been awesome. You guys take care out there. 5 days ago, I discovered the entrance to an attic located below my cellar. There's someone whistling on the other side of it. Listen, I understand how that title sounds, but there's no typo. English is my first language, and I didn't miss any words. I couldn't present my current circumstances any more literally, and I've struggled with figuring out the best place to start. I suppose this is as good as any other, so bear with me. 5 days ago, I discovered an attic below my cellar. I grew up here, secluded on the top of a hill. No neighbors as far as the eye can see. On starless nights, I vividly remember this farmhouse casting a dim light across the surrounding woodland like the lone candle flickering atop a first birthday cake. Its 2 stories had more rooms than the 3 of us. My parents and I knew what to do with. The excessive space was the only extravagance, though. Otherwise, the house wasn't much more than a porch, a gabled roof, and a musty, unfurnished cellar with a bunch of empty rooms sandwiched in between. The property has been in my deadbeat of a father's family for generations. When he stepped out on us, ownership passed on to my mother. She died in her sleep 3 months ago, so now it's mine. All of which is to say, I've stepped over that space in the cellar hundreds of times over the course of my life, but I'd never seen that small wooden hatch until this week. Or, maybe more accurately, I'd never perceived it until this week. When I pulled the rope to open the hatch, finally at my wit's end with the whole of it, the constant whistling, the screeching violin, the ungodly angel, I couldn't comprehend what I was looking at. It took me a while to wrap my mind around the mechanics. Once it clicked, the magnitude of the impossible contradiction lit my spine on fire. Through the hatch, I saw the ceiling of an attic I didn't recognize. Although it was the middle of the night where I was, it was daytime in the room beneath me. I could tell by the pure blue sky and the sunlight streaming from the open window in one of its corners. I'm getting slightly ahead of myself, though. Life is such a maddeningly complex phenomenon, and yet your brain will try to convince you it's all relatively straightforward. What you see in front of you is what's there, full stop. No room for nuance, no space for intricacy. It is what it is. My dad, the self-proclaimed clairvoyant, taught me otherwise. He'd say things like, reality is a painting that spreads on forever, in every direction. Perception is the frame. Everyone and everything is born with a different frame. Some are bigger, some are smaller. Your experience in this life is only what lives in that frame. But don't let that mislead you. It's a grain of sand, not the whole beach. As much as I despise the man, I have to admit that he could dispense some wisdom when the mood suited him. Science has only progressed to prove him correct as well. Take the mantis shrimp, for example. Unassuming little crustaceans that, somehow, could perceive 12 separate wavelengths of color, staggering in comparison to our measly 3, red, green, and blue. Their frame of perception captures a piece of reality distinct from our own, illustrating that just because we can't see those 9 additional colors, doesn't mean they aren't there. Maybe I wouldn't have spent my 20s homeless on the streets of Chicago if he stayed around long enough to impart his entire sagely portfolio, rather than just a few breadcrumbs here and there. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that he'd say all this one minute, acting like a paragon of philosophical thought, and then loudly complain that he was being stalked by biblically accurate angels the next. I have multiple memories of him telling my mother through urgent whispers that they were watching his every move. Balls of eyes like a pile of burning coals lurking in all the empty spaces of our home, staring at him with unclear intent. The man was unhinged. When my mother wasn't around, he'd ask me if I could see them as well. Told me that most of the men in our bloodline can massage the veil, whatever the fuck that means. He'd go on to explain that if I should happen to peer in between the layers of reality, I shouldn't be afraid, but I should be careful. Standing above me, his pupils wide and black like falling meteors in the night sky, he'd warn me of the so-called dangers. The more you look, the more you'll see. The more things that you can see, the more things that can see you back. I think I was 7 when he first said that. You don't know how to instill crippling anxiety in a child? Fear so debilitating that it manifests as wild, unchecked alcoholism once it's given the opportunity? This is a great recipe. Until the hatch in the cellar, never saw a goddamn thing that shouldn't logically be there, despite my deeply ingrained fears. Heard some things, though. Somber, wordless lullabies from somewhere deep inside a broom closet, the pitch of the voice wavering abruptly between a little too high and a little too low. The notes of a pipe organ falling gently from my bedroom ceiling like raindrops. Lyrics sung to me by a child I couldn't see in a language I didn't understand. Naturally, I took my dad's advice. Pretended like I couldn't hear the phantom noises. For the most part, he turned out to be right. That tactic kept a lid on things. Moving back into my childhood home was a mistake, but it was a steady roof over my head for the first time in years, and my mom needed the help. For the 6 months that I was taking care of her, the house was quiet. As soon as she passed, though, the ethereal clamor returned at a peak intensity. I had no more distractions, I guess. The night after the funeral, I was sitting on the porch, absorbed in a moment of bitter tranquility as I listened to the quiet chatter coming from the forest. I sipped warm, decaffeinated coffee, doing my damnedest to avoid thinking about how much more comforting a tumbler of whiskey would be. The sound of a melody interrupted that internal conflict, cutting through the tuneless humming of insects. The noise was shrill, oddly familiar, and it wasn't coming from the wilderness. It was someone whistling, and they were behind me, projecting the melody from somewhere within the house. I sprang from my rocking chair to face the disembodied sound drifting through the open door. The act of me jumping up made a lot of noise, the feet of the chair creaking, the thump of my boots slamming against the floorboards. But the whistling didn't react. It didn't slow or stop. The melody kept on, eerily unfazed. As I stood in front of the doorway, terror galloped through me, shaking my body like the thrums of an earthquake. Eventually, adrenaline converted fear into anger, and anger always comes packaged with a bit of dumb courage. I grabbed a baseball bat from my mom's old truck and proceeded to do laps through the hallways of my childhood home with a teetering look of confidence. As I stomped from room to room, the melody ringing in my ears, salty tears unexpectedly welled up under my eyes. The airy refrain was just so familiar, but I still couldn't discern why it was familiar. Tracking the sound to its origin put me in front of the hatch for the first time. It wasn't more than a few steps from the bottom of the stairs. I rounded the corner, pulled the metal drawstring that turned on the cellar's dusty light bulb, and there it was. Positioned in the middle of the basement, an oaken trapdoor with a frayed rope attached, emitting the muffled whistling like it was a buried jukebox. In the blink of an eye, I felt my bravery evaporate, released in tandem with the copious sweat that was now dripping from every inch of my body. My mom needed supplemental oxygen in the last few months of her life, and this is where we kept the tanks, right over the space that the hatch now occupied. It had been nothing but dirt the day before. I stared at the closed passageway from the safety of the cellar landing, but I did not dare approach. Not that night, at least. Instead, I let the baseball bat fall limply from my hand, turned around, and walked back up the stairs. Numbed to the point of indifference, I continued up another flight of stairs to my bedroom, and I immediately crumbled onto my mattress. 5 days ago, utter exhaustion allowed rest to come easily. Since then, however, sleep has evaded me completely. The whistling wasn't some bizarre manifestation of grief that would vanish once I woke up, like I had hoped that first night. When my eyes fluttered open, it was still there, faint but consistent like the ticking of a grandfather clock. My boss at the nearby grocery store sounded worried when I called him, requesting to be placed back on the schedule for the week. Originally, I had taken bereavement leave through the end of the month. After the whistling started, though, I would have done anything to occupy myself outside the house. With $50 in my savings account, I had little options, and I was desperate not to find myself slapping those $50 against the surface of a bar top. Eventually, he relented. At first, time away from the incessant whistling helped. 3 days in, though, the melody turned out to be quite the earworm. It rang in my head like church bells, reverberating endlessly against acoustic bone, but never actually dissipating, no matter how much time I spent away from it. Yesterday, I was standing over the stovetop in my kitchen, forcing undercooked scrambled eggs down my throat as quickly as its muscles would allow me so I could leave for work. Retching from the revolting texture, I placed the ceramic plate down on the tile countertop with more power than I intended. As a result, a loud clatter exploded through the room. Briefly, I couldn't hear the whistling over the sound. When the plate stilled, the air had finally stilled too. Pure, unabated silence filled my ears, which caused a tremendous wave of relief to flood through my chest. From where I stood, the cellar door was directly behind me. Before I could really savor the relief, that door creaked open, the splintered wood present on the bottom dragging harshly against its frame. Reflexively, I spun around. The door was newly ajar, but nothing and no one was there. Heart thumping and wide-eyed, I waited in the silence, trying to seduce thick air into my lungs as I watched for whatever had opened the door to finally appear. I stared at the space, breathless, and yet still nothing came. Until I blinked, that is. And then it was just there. When my eyelids opened, it had materialized in the entryway, motionless and grotesque beyond comprehension. A wheel of charcoal flesh, approximately 6 feet tall and 2 feet wide, held up by 3 hands protruding from its base. The wheel itself was littered with eyes, thousands of frost-white, sickly-looking orbs of different sizes with no irises or pupils. Some blinked rapidly, inhumanly quick, like the shutter of a camera lens. Others stayed open, their focus placed solely on me with indecipherable intent. The hands grew out of a central stump, sprouting haphazardly from the wheel with no sense of design or forethought. They were like the rampaging tumors, expanding aimlessly while also fighting for space and control. The largest was in the back, supporting the fleshy construct with a half crescent of muscular fingers. At least 30 in total, if not more. 2 smaller, weaker hands jutted out from the front. They were nearly twins, but the appendages had slight differences in their knuckle placement and their overall brawn. Unable to remain unblinking indefinitely, my eyes eventually closed. I instantly forced them back open, expecting that the wheel would have moved to pounce in the time I wasn't watching it. Instead, it had vanished. Or worse, it was still there, staring at me from 1,000 distinct vantages, but I simply wasn't perceiving it anymore. I tried to convince myself that I was just losing my mind. Hallucinations from a grief-stricken, maladapted, alcohol-deprived brain. The Angel's departure left something behind, however, which confirmed to me its ungodly existence. When I stepped towards the cellar door, I noticed a trail of black ash that led down the stairs and across the dirt floor. Of course, I would later find that the trail ended right at the edge of the hatch. I bent over and rubbed some of it between my fingers. The ash was thin like soot, but it was inexplicably cold, to the point where it felt like I was developing frostbite. As I rinsed the dust off in the sink, my panic quickly rising from the biting pain, the whistling abruptly resumed, now accompanied by the harsh screeches of what sounded like a violin. Over the next day, sometimes the violin mirrored the melody, and sometimes it played the melody with a slight delay, lagging chaotically behind the whistle's reliable tempo. No matter what it did, the unseen instrument was brutally out of tune. The discord was like a cheese grater sliding against my brain, shredding flakes of my sanity off with every drag. I would wager I slept for no longer than an hour last night, restlessly watching for the return of the black wheel. As far as I could tell, though, it never came. When dawn spilled through my bedroom window, however, I noticed something that turned my blood into sleet. There was a silhouette made of the ash above my bed in the wheel's shape. No idea when it got there, or why I was just noticing it then. My eyes followed the ash as it curved along the wall, down onto the floor, under my locked bedroom door, eventually leading all the way back to the hatch. Maybe it crawled up here in the brief moments I was asleep. But I think the more likely explanation is that it lingered above my bed while I was still awake, present but imperceptible. Half a day later, I would cautiously push my head through the open hatch, seeing for myself what existence looked like on the other side. I'm not expecting you to understand why I didn't run. All I could say is, over time, the melody beckoned me through the threshold. 4 hours ago, I anchored myself to the cellar by a rope tied to my waist in the foot of a nearby water heater. Like I said at the top of this post, although night had fallen outside, it was the middle of the day in the attic when I pulled the hatch open. Oddly, the whistling had become fairly quiet, and the discordant violin had disappeared entirely. The notes of the whistling were clearer, but overall the melody was softer. Driven by a magnetism I couldn't possibly understand at that moment, I lowered my head and my shoulders into the passageway. The experience fucked up my internal equilibrium in ways that I can't find the right words to describe. I was putting my body down, but as my eyes peered over the attic floor, my head felt like it was going up. Fighting through pangs of practically existential nausea, I slowly continued to lower myself in. Collarbone deep, I could view most of the attic. To my surprise, there wasn't anything obviously otherworldly. The room itself was pretty barren, nothing but a desk and a sewing machine pushed against the wall opposite to me with a large window above it. I perked my ears, trying to localize the exact point of origin for the whistling. Before I could find it, however, a child unexpectedly walked by my head from behind me, causing a yelp to leap from my vocal cords. Instinctively, I pulled my body out of the hole. Anxiously kneeling next to the open hatch, I waited to hear some response to my outcry. A scream, a distress call to a nearby parent, something to indicate that I had been heard. Unexpectedly, all was quiet on the other side. There was some faint rustling of drawers, and the whistling continued, but otherwise both worlds were still. Now trembling, I once again lowered my head into the hatch. The child, who couldn't have been more than 5 years old, was sitting at the desk, kicking their legs and coloring. She looked normal. Certainly wasn't the black wheel of blinking flesh that had invaded my home the day before. Just find what the fuck is making the whistling, I reminded myself. In the cellar, I moved my knees around the perimeter of the hatch, which slowly spun my head around to the part of the attic I hadn't seen yet. When I turned, there was an old wardrobe and a few pieces of furniture covered by a dusty see-through tarp, but nothing more than that. Suddenly, I heard the squeak of the child pushing her chair out from her desk behind me. There was a pause, and then they called out in a voice 3 octaves too low for their size. Is anyone there? When I turned back, the child was facing me. They stared at me, but through me, as if they sensed my presence but didn't see my physical form. I failed to choke back a scream, but when it escaped my lips, they didn't react to it. Their facial texture was horribly distorted, uneven and bubbling from chin to hairline. Both eyes were on their right side, one on their forehead and one where their cheekbone should be. I could appreciate nearly the entire curve of the higher eye as it bulged outward, while the other eye was reciprocally sunken, showing only the tip of a pupil peeking out from the caving skin. Their mouth carved a diagonal line across the face, severing their visage into 2 equal triangular spaces. They asked again, slower, and somehow even deeper this time around, causing their face to practically bloom, revealing 2 petals of red, pulsating tissue as their diagonal maw spread wide. Is anyone there? All of a sudden, the whistling's volume became deafening, like it was being sung into my ear from a mere few inches away. At the same time, it was the clearest I'd heard it up until that point. In a moment of horrific realization, I remembered why I knew that godforsaken collection of notes. It was the lead melody from Etude Opus 2, No. 1, by Alexander Scriabin, my father's favorite piece of music, and it wasn't coming from anywhere around me. It was coming from above me. When I looked up, I saw the black wheel, hanging motionless from the rafters by its 3 hands like a sleeping bat. It was so close that my face nearly made contact with its flesh as I tilted my neck. In an explosion of movement, I wrenched my body out of the attic and slammed the hatch down to close the passageway. Through raspy breaths, I sprinted around the basement, pulling boxes and other items on top of the hatch. In less than a minute, there was a mound of random objects stacked on top of the obscene doorway. Feverishly, I inspected the barrier, but it still didn't feel like enough. Scanning the cellar for additional weight, I saw a particularly hefty trunk all the way on the other end of the room. When I darted over to grab it, I was yanked face first into the hard dirt, momentum halted by the rope that still connected my torso to the water heater. Moaning on the ground, my abdomen burned from the squeeze in my nose. No doubt broken from the fall, leaked warm blood down the back of my throat. The searing pains caused my mania to slow, and I sluggishly turned over onto my back to untie the rope from my waist. As I did, my eyes scanned the cellar. I couldn't see the black wheel around me, but I could still hear the whistling. It was distant, but it was still there. Not only that, but the notes, although faint, seemed to have a bit more energy to them. like below the hatch, the wheel was excited, overjoyed even. Moments later, the melody ceased. I was skeptical at first, believing it was just another tiny intermission, but it went silent for hours. The hatch was still there too. And in the silence that followed, I feel like I finally understood the message that the whistling was attempting to deliver to me. Hey, son, I'm down here. I may look a little different, but I'm still your father. Now, are you ready to join me? Decades ago, it seems that my father slipped through a break in reality and ended up somewhere else. Can't tell if that was a voluntary or involuntary decision on his end, but I theorize he spent so much time out of his natural position that he began to undergo changes. Became one of those angels that only he could see from my childhood. The implication being that those angels were people from other places that somehow became stuck in our piece of existence, I guess. Unfortunately, I'm now able to perceive the hole my father disappeared down all those years ago. The optimistic side of me wants to believe the fracture is bound to my childhood home, so burning it down and having it cave in on itself may actually plug the cosmic leak. The pessimistic side of me, on the other hand, recognizes it probably isn't that simple, and that side has some new evidence to bolster their argument as well. It's just like my dad said, the more you look, the more you'll see. The more things that you can see, the more things that can see you back. As I'm sitting in my mom's truck with a canister of gasoline and a box of matches, typing this all up on my weathered iPhone, I'm hearing things in the woods. In front of me, a deep, unearthly voice is humming a new lullaby from within the dark canopy. Behind me, from the black depths of my childhood home, I've begun to hear the whistling again. Minute by minute, both seem to only be getting closer. Is there any point in burning this place to the ground before I go? Or now that I can fully perceive the melodies and the wheel of blinking flesh that my father has become, is there any point in running at all? Where can you even hide from that sort of thing? I just don't know. But I guess I'll find out. And that was 5 days ago. I discovered the entrance to an attic located below my cellar. There's someone whistling on the other side of it, by Unalloyed Saint Trina. Unalloyed? You're not made of alloy, or you don't have alloys for you. I'm clearly missing a context here because I'm thinking of like metal, but I could be totally wrong. We're gonna move on from that. Sorry, I didn't really have anything clever to say. So this story is quite interesting. Actually, I found it to be really good. There's a lot of really interesting descriptors in here, which kind of, especially some of them are a little bit fresher, which is quite nice. So they're not really things you might have heard before. Like I have to find the specific one that I really got a kick out of. Hang on, it's the one I liked the most was Terror Galloped Through Me. I was like, oh wow, that's interesting. I like that one. A great descriptor. So this story's interesting. This story's strange because I've discussed angels before on the Too Weird to Be True, the Christmas episodes that we were doing. Specifically, we had a actual episode talking about angels and the fact that there are different. Not exactly so. The common misconception about angels is that they are these humanoid, representations with wings, right? That's what we always think of whenever somebody says angel. But there are different versions of angels as well, some which don't really look very normal. And the most important one that always gets brought up that people like to refer to is the biblical accurate representation of angels, which is more commonly known as the thrones type of angel. And they're the ones that are the rings with all the eyes and stuff like that, which is kind of what I thought this was going to be based on some of the description. A little bit different though, because this one has arms and no pupils. I mean, granted, some of the thrones don't have pupils. That's not that weird, but the arms part is strange because some of the thrones have wings, but they don't really have any other limbs. They're just like rings, right? So I was like, well, that's kind of weird. That's really interesting, especially the charcoal color. I thought it was a really interesting kind of a creature. I also don't know what kind of noises or sounds they could make. I imagine they can speak in a way, probably like through a form of telepathy or something like that, because obviously they have to have a form of communication, even though they have their own language and all that jazz. The important thing, though, that I keep coming back to, though, is it immediately made me think of a few different things, especially the fact that I had like extra fingers, right? Which first immediately jumped into my head because I've been playing Elden Ring. The finger creeper monsters that have just like way too many fingers and they're a freaking nightmare to fight. Yeah, those guys are ugly as shit. So imagine one of those as part of the base for this thing, right? Like really, really creepy, weird. So it sort of made me think of like Dungeons and Dragons creatures and stuff, which I didn't really do too much delving into that. But it felt like it's something you would find in Dungeons and Dragons for sure. But yeah, I couldn't really get too much more info about what I thought this creature could be. It's clearly just a. I mean, I could be wrong, and I'm happy for somebody to correct me. It feels like it's taken inspiration from certain places and kind of meshed together ideas that just create this new creature. I think it's great. I love this horrific monstrosity that does something that I find really really interesting as well. Because so for me it leads credence to the idea of more than three dimensions that we're aware of. I mean, you can also include time as a dimension, but that's a different form of a dimension. It's not a spatial dimension; it's a time dimension. Is that which is why some people might say we live in four dimensions, which is understandable. But I'm talking about spatial dimensions specifically. And I know these theories, these concepts and stuff that get brought up. Yet again, not proven facts or anything like that. This is through a variety of different studies. But one of my favorites is Michio Kaku with his book Hyperspace. And in it, he talks about, like, we don't know exactly how many dimensions there could be. We believe maybe 10 is what a potential idea is. But yet again, even that's not, like, fully fleshed out or anything. But going through a lot of his hypotheses and his theories and everything are really, really interesting. And one of the most important parts I'm trying to relay to this is the fact that we cannot comprehend things above three spatial dimensions. So, for all we know, we might be surrounded by things that are of higher dimensions, but we just cannot comprehend them. Therefore, we cannot see them, nor maybe even hear them or anything. Kind of like the child in this story, right? Even though the dude basically screams in the child's face, the child has zero awareness of his existence. Because, I mean, yet again, I don't know if it's because of dimensions, but that's just how I like to perceive this. It explains why things might only be perceived in certain ways and not fully picked up as well. A tesseract is a really interesting comparison when it comes to those kind of things. I really like that. Yet again, I don't know if that's exactly what's going on here because they lean more into the clairvoyant side of stuff, and I totally understand that. It's a world I don't really know so much about, so I won't comment on that aspect. I think it's a perfectly fine solution and answer to the story. I think that makes total sense. Um, I really like the story. I really, really did, especially the fact that it's this whole other world clearly that is somehow attached to your house, and then it might also potentially be your dad? Question mark? Which I have to admit I don't think is confirmed though. I mean, I didn't check through the comments or anything, but it's hypothesized in the story that it will be the father. But I don't think that could be true. I could be wrong. I don't know exactly what the story is trying to tell with that aspect. But whatever this creature is, it's, clearly beyond our current comprehension idea, right? Anyway, um, really great story. Really, really enjoyed the story because it just made you think about so many weird things and aspects. And so when it comes to what it made me think of, so I didn't have a perfect comparison that ever came to my mind, but one of the first ones that did was, funnily enough, the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The fact that you know there's this secret space that they may not have been aware of, which takes them to a completely different world. That's the only true comparison of this that I can come up with off the top of my head. It's yet again not perfect. I suppose another one is anything to do with like portal capabilities, wormholes if you want. You could be talking like Rick and Morty stuff, like how you literally go through one thing and you're in a completely different place. Yeah, similar to with wormholes or the game Portal, another example. Um, Maybe Doctor Who. Maybe there's a little bit of a comparison there because yet again, it's like you look at this police box and it's regular size on the outside, but you go inside and it's completely different. It's much bigger. Very tricky with his chameleon circuit. Because I'm a nerd. Let's see what else. It also made me think of Silent Hill 4: The Room. I really really love Silent Hill. So it's a great series in my opinion, and I really like this one especially because it's about this guy. I'm not going to give too many spoilers, but it's about this guy who's essentially trapped in his own apartment, And we're talking like chains on the door and everything. Like literally, he didn't do any of this. He just woke up one day and it was like this. He can't get out. He can see the outside world through his peephole, but he can't like really look out windows or anything like that. Like he's not allowed for some weird reason. But he ends up finding this hole in the wall. And if he crawls through this hole in the wall, the thing is, he doesn't go to, say, the next apartment over or a completely different building in the same town or something. No, no, no. He goes to a completely different world of Silent Hill, which is filled with monstrosities and horrors and stuff. And we can get into that shit sometime if you want to, if you don't know it, like I do. But, just a fun comparison in my mind. Yeah, it was. No, I found the story. Yeah, it's strange. It's interesting. I would love more information. And I'd really like to know down in the comments below what this made you think of. Or maybe you have more answers than I do, in which case, please let me know some more information, educate me on certain things, or just let me know what you thought about it and what it made you think of. I'd really like to know, especially if it's more things I can look into that I can absorb and enjoy. I think that'd be awesome. This has been it's been one hell of a story, and I've super enjoyed reading it, and I sure hope you enjoyed following along with me. This has been Nate at Night. I'll see you next time. Take care out there. My math textbook won't stop describing my house, down to the smallest detail. Practice problem. The room. Your bedroom measures 12 feet by 14 feet, with a ceiling height of 9 feet. If you wanted to paint all 4 walls but not the ceiling or floor, how many square feet of paint would you need? Hint. Don't forget to subtract the area of the single window, 3 feet by 3 feet. It was the hint that startled me, because I had once measured the length of my window with my dad, and I remembered we needed a perfectly square piece of glass, the same length on both sides. After completing the question, I decided, just for laughs, to make some measurements. What were the odds of my room matching the exact description in this workbook? My dad's measuring tape was one of the heavy-duty ones he used for his work. I weighted it down with one of my dumbbells and dragged its yellow tongue until it measured each wall faithfully. As soon as I finished, a chill creeped through me. Goosebumps shot down my legs. It all matched. The dimensions were the exact same as in my math book. As if sensing my fear, the page on my math book darkened. And it may have been a trick of the light, but the words also felt like they were shimmering? I read the next question. Practice problem. The knock. You were sitting in your bedroom when you hear a single knock from across the house. The total volume of air in your house is approximately 8,000 cubic feet. The speed of sound in air is 1,125 feet per second. Based on the sound of the knock, how close do you estimate the knock to be? I reread the problem about 5 times to try and understand what they were getting at. How could I possibly calculate this? What knock? And then I heard it, off in the distance. Downstairs. A knock. It sounded like someone had rapped their knuckles twice on wood. What the fuck? Dad? Is that you? I shouted down the hall. But no, of course it wasn't. He had left 20 minutes ago for a meeting downtown. I was alone. Hello? I could hear my voice faintly echo down the hall, and then I could hear the knuckles rapping again, much harder. I shut the door to my room and put my back against it. Do I call the cops? What do I tell them? That there's a knocking? I paced back and forth, focusing on my breathing. Relax, relax. It's probably just a neighbor knocking at the front door, or a Jehovah's Witness or something. I live in a safe neighborhood. There's something perfectly reasonable that explains all of this. I took a hard look at my grade 9 workbook. The pages were so crisply parted open. It's as if the book was trying to invite me back. It demanded my touch. I grabbed my pencil and scribbled in my answer. The knock is approximately 30 feet away, 1 floor below. I tried to close the book to end this schism, this crazy paranoia once and for all. But I couldn't touch the paper. It's like there was some kind of magnetic field now repelling me. The hell? The math page darkened and absorbed the lead I just added. Right below where my pencil had just been, a new question appeared in a thin, scratchy font. Practice problem. The visit. You have been chosen. A Euclidean primitive is coming to your destination, and you must give it your most valuable dimension. Which one will you forfeit? My panic returned, full blown. What the hell was this? In a blind haste, I tried to kick the book out of my room, but my leg was deflected. It's like the air around the book had become bouncy, pushing anything away with equal force. I was about to try wrapping the book with a blanket when the knocking returned. Right at my door. I screamed and lunged for my baseball bat under my bed. The door to my room was still closed, but I could sense there was something hiding behind it. Something that did not belong in my house. With a white-knuckle grip, I poised the bat for a strike. I tried to sound commanding, but could only squeeze out a quivering, "Who's there? Who the fuck's there?" The knob twisted, and the door drifted open with a slow, unceremonious creak. I watched as the painted white wood swung open and revealed nothing. There was nothing standing in my hallway. In fact, there was less than nothing. My hallway didn't exist. Instead of wooden floors and gray baseboards, I was staring into a sort of mirror image. I saw a copy of my bedroom on the other side of the door. My bed, my window, and even an identical version of my math book were lying on the floor. Everything that existed in my room existed reversed in that other room, too. Well, everything except me. I seemed to be the only living person between these two rooms. Keeping my arms glued to the bat, I peered around the corner of the door, and as I did, there came a weird cracking noise, kind of like glass breaking. It crinkled from the doppelganger bed in tiny bursts. I stared through the doorframe, bat at eye level. "Hello?" Something spoke back, replicating my voice. The words sounded like they had passed through several glass tubes. "Hello?" My entire chest tightened. I held my bat high. "What is this?" Something glistened above the inverted bed. I could see the sheets rustle as a weight lifted off the mattress. "This. A set of shifting mirrors came toward me. Hovering cubes and other prisms had formed into the rough, anthropoid-like shape of a person, but they didn't render any texture. The entire surface area of this being was a mirror, reflecting all the inverted wallpaper and backwards decor of my control-copied room. Holy shit! I backed away. Feebly, I tried to close my bedroom door, but the mirror golem stuck out one of its prismatic hands. In the blink of an eye, my door became paper. The 2 inches of thickness to my door suddenly disappeared. It's like the 3-dimensional depth had vanished. The Euclidean primitive then grasped my paper-thin door and crinkled it into a ball. Oh, God. All I could do was run into the corner behind my original bed. Please, no. Go away. The matter-destroying math thing came into my room and stared at me with its mirror cube face. I could see a perfect reflection of my own terrified expression. "No, God," it said. Warm liquid streamed down my leg, trickling into my socks. There's no point in hiding it. Yes, I pissed my pants. "Please, take whatever you want and go." I took a quick glimpse at my math book and saw that a new line had appeared. Hint. Forfeit a dimension. I looked back at the mirror golem and pointed at the book. You want a dimension? Go for it. Take the book. Take all the dimensions." The Euclidean primitive walked up and stopped at the foot of my bed. There was something menacing about all the warped reflections on its body. Ceiling stucco on its shoulders, TV set on its chest, and the underside of my bed on its legs. It was like an all-powerful extension of my room. It could control my reality. Its prismatic hand raised up, then pointed at my face. "You pick." I didn't understand. Was it asking me which dimension I wanted to lose? My gaze shifted to my crumpled paper-like door in the corner. If I lost my depth like my door, I'd become as flat as a cutout. In fact, if I lost my width or length of any dimension, the result would be the same. I'd become a 2D slice. A skin flake. There's no way I could survive that. That was death. Then, out of nowhere, my stupid cat meow alarm went off on my phone. The digital clock reminded me to water the kitchen plants. But I was also reminded of something else. I pointed at the clock mounted above my bed. Time! That's a dimension, isn't it? The mirror entity stared at me, unmoving. "Take time. The fourth dimension. Take as much as you want of it. The Euclidean primitive turned to face the clock. Its mirrors began to glow.
Time.
I swallowed a grapefruit down my throat, hoping this might save me from becoming a dead two-dimensional pancake. Yes, please, take time. Take all you want. I mean, there's lots of time to go around, isn't there? I thought to myself. The prismatic golem outstretched its mirror arms, which produced a fierce, bright light. The white bounced off the walls. It became all-enveloping. I shielded my eyes.
Time.
My dad screamed when he first saw me. I was standing at the top of the stairs, waving to him normally, but instead of beaming back with a smile, he threatened me with a knife. What's going on? Dad, it's me. Who are you? Where's my son? There was no use trying to reason with him. His confusion was perfectly understandable. Answer me! Where is my son? I am your son, Dad. It's me, Donnie. For a moment, it looked like he could almost believe me. He could almost believe in the far-flung possibility that his son suddenly looked 80 years older. But that possibility very quickly flittered away. His face was a mask of disgust. You sick fuck! Why are you in my son's clothes? What have you done? Dad, please. It's me, Donovan. I watched my dad's eyes fill with a fury I had never seen. He stomped up the stairs, sleeves rolled up on his sides, ready to stab or strangle me. We watched football together, Dad. We just watched a game 2 nights ago. The Dolphins game, remember? Stop it! My dad pointed at me with his knife. You fucking stop it! Right now! I hobbled backwards, feeling the pain in my lower back as I fought against my old man hunch. I went into the washroom and cowered in the bathtub. The reflection of my new, wrinkled, white-haired face terrified me almost as much as my dad did. Through snot and tears, I pleaded for my life. It's me! Please, Dad, you have to believe me. 10 nights in jail. 10 full nights. The amount of growing up I've had to do over the last couple of days has been staggering. At one point, the police were threatening to get me committed, which I knew meant going to the place where I'd be in a straitjacket all the time. And I really didn't want that to happen. But on the 11th morning, my dad showed up and suddenly dropped all charges. My assigned officer told me my father had no further interest in this case, that he was very distraught and didn't want to jail an elderly man who was clearly mentally ill. My dad had practically begged them to let me go. And so they did. The moment I stepped outside of the police station, my dad grabbed me by the shoulder and apologized profusely. Over and over. The words were soft, quiet little murmurs. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I've since been allowed back into the house, where for the last 48 hours I've been resting in my old room, slowly getting my strength back. My dad has brought me food, helped me shave my beard, and dress in a clean set of pajamas that must have belonged to him. It's still too soon for words. My dad mostly just rubs my head and hugs me each time he visits. Sometimes he cries quietly to himself. In between one of his coming and goings, I went to the washroom and took a peek inside his study. There I saw blueprints for some building contract he'd been revising for City Hall. In the upper left corner of the diagram, I saw the same thin, scratchy, shimmering font I saw in my textbook, which meant my dad had been talking with the Euclidean primitive as well. Practice problem. The absolute value. A father must choose between the son that was, x equals 15, and the son that is, y equals 91. This equation allows borrowing time from the father, z equals 55. Hint. How many of your years are you willing to loan? And that was My Math Textbook Won't Stop Describing My House, down to the smallest detail, by Eclosion K2. This is, it's really funny that we actually had the story kind of went in this direction, going heavily into geometry and dimensions, because just last week's story, we also mentioned a bit about at least my idea of higher dimensions and how that might explain certain bizarre things, right? And it's really funny that, that's come up a fair bit here, but it also includes a lot more about the geometry side of things, which is which is quite interesting. But I'm not exactly a mathematician. I'm not the best when it comes to understanding all those things. But I'll try to break down some of the concepts a little bit here. So it's amazing because yet again you have this we have this Euclidean primitive, which for those of you who don't know, Euclidean is literally it's relating or denoting the system of geometry based on the work of Euclid, who is an ancient Greek mathematician who is considered the father of geometry. His name is Euclid. That's why Euclidean. And the idea of a primitive, though, does kind of go a little bit different. I don't know if this is exactly what they were going for, but there are primitives in geometry, right? Which is referring to the fundamental undefined terms or concepts upon which the entire system of geometry is built, such as points, lines, and planes. But I don't think that's exactly what we're going for here, but I feel like there is a little bit of truth still to this, because this, I mean, I suppose we'll say creature, entity feels a bit more appropriate in this scenario. This entity that works in a mirrored plane of existence, which makes me think of the countless different things, including even the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Doctor Who, Star Trek. There's countless stories and shows and movies, even books, comics, you name it, that use this this idea of a mirror universe as almost like a parallel universe. In some cases, they might call it something different, like a Bizarro thing, but Bizarro is usually a bit more evil and twisted and weird, not exactly always a perfect mirror. But in other cases, they look at a mirror universe as like it's an alternate timeline, right? Where basically things are similar, but some choices were different, therefore leading to different conclusions. But in other cases, it's sort of just a reflection of your own universe and blah blah blah. Yeah, so we have this entity in this mirror universe, as I like to see it, or I suppose mirror dimension. I don't really know how you want to. I think mirror dimension is a little bit more appropriate, which I don't quite understand that exactly. But yet again, it's not like I fully understand the concepts of everything I'm talking about. Anyway, I'm just merely intrigued and interested. And this creature, this entity is, well, it clearly found somebody it could play with, right? And it's able to steal a dimension, which I think the worst part is the fact that, like, well, it could have even stolen physical dimensions. Now, that is horrifying in a concept, really, because, I mean, imagine you're going all the way from, like, what we're used to as reality, right? Where we're living in 3 physical dimensions. And then, like I said, you got the time dimension. That is technically a dimension according to science, but, I don't know the full semantics behind all that. So I'm just telling you what my understanding of it is. But if he had chosen to lose one of the physical dimensions, I mean, like you said, it literally would change his entire fabric of reality as well, and pretty much probably die. Because it's you would become basically as thin as a line, right? That's the whole point. It reminds me yet again. I'm not going to go too much into the Michio Kaku book I mentioned last week. I'll pop a little link down here if you want to go a little bit into that. And in there he specifically talks about this world called Flatland, which yet again it's a hyperbole. And the point is, it's talking about 2-dimensional creatures, how they exist in 2-dimensional space, and if they were to encounter a 3-dimensional creature, they wouldn't see it in 3 dimensions because they cannot comprehend 3 dimensions. They would see it as lines. They would still see it as a 2D concept, which means they're not getting the full picture. If, say, a 3D creature went through their 2D space, they would see it almost like lines in like those flip books. Imagine something like that, right? Except it's like slowly going through, and the animation would be of an entire 3D creature, whatever was going through their space, right? If that could be comprehended. And so, yeah, to downgrade from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions would be a death sentence. It would be horrifying. I know I wouldn't pick it. I wouldn't pick it at all. I would have also done the same. I would have absolutely gone with time, sacrificing time, because yeah, I mean, you're still going to die, but at least you don't die as quickly. It's no matter what, all choices in this are bad, but at least time is the least bad out of all the choices that you really have. I can't even imagine. That would be, well, what a horrifying thought. What a horrifying thought for a really interesting story about a creature, entity, dimensional being that is probably, it's just so, I hate it. I love it and I hate it. God. Oh. What dimension would you give up? What dimension would you give up? Honestly, I don't think you could choose anything besides time. Maybe there are other dimensions we're not even fully aware of. I totally could understand that concept, but then how would you define them? Right? Anyway, moving on. The story's quite good. I've got to bring up some comments that are in the story right at the bottom because some of them are a little interesting, and I thought we want to kind of cover them a little bit. So, Huwu Minamino says, I wonder if you could write a math problem of your own in order to get back your youth. It almost feels like we're talking about magically writing in a book to make things happen, right? Which would make me think of not quite Death Note, but that's one of the first things that pops into my head about the fact that you can write something and something happens. Except in that case, it's you write down a name and they die. But, the first thing I thought of. And Eclosion says, that is a good idea. Some kind of equation that can help lose at least 20 to 30 years. When I have the strength, I'll have to consult my math book. I'm really afraid of looking at it, but maybe if I face it together with my dad, we can figure something out. That's quite interesting. And then there's one more thing I'd like to bring up here. Another interesting comment that is going to teach us a little something today. I know, I certainly learned something. No Communication 7 said, should have tried shooting it with a theodolite. If your dad's an architect, he might have one or a similar instrument. Might be worth a try if the primitive comes back. And Eclosion says, had to look up what a theodolite was. But yes, my dad does have one of these. This might be a good defense against primitive. I also had to look up what a theodolite is because I was like, well, first off, that word sounds made up. Which, I mean, all words are made up, but whatever. And, no, it is a real thing. And I don't know how you would shoot something with it, but I just don't understand what it is. Although, I think it's really cool. So, a theodolite is a precision or optical instrument used for measuring angles in both horizontal and vertical planes. Crucial for surveying, civil engineering, and other applications requiring accurate angular measurements. So, it sounds like a very good measurement tool, but of a variety of uses, right? I suppose that could help you defeat a geometry primitive monster. I have no idea how that would work. But yet again, as I said at the start of this, I'm not a mathematician. I don't really fucking understand some of these more complex, concepts, especially when it comes to math. As much as I enjoy the concept of physics, that doesn't mean I fully understand it. Yeah, and as I said, it reminded me of things like Star Trek has a kind of mirror universe. It gets brought up like once or twice. It's really not brought up much. Doctor Who has mentions of a mirror universe, and I think there was an episode a long, long time ago where they end up imprisoning the Master in some kind of a thing. But that could have been Star Trek. I really don't remember. I couldn't find it. But it's a little weird square mirror looking thing that they're able to kind of fling off. It's supposed to be a prison. I if somebody knows exactly what I'm talking about, please let me know what it is because I don't know the term for it. I just remember the imagery, and I remember them talking about it being a prison that's like really inescapable and stuff. It was really cool. And then yeah, like I said, also a more popular one recently is Marvel Cinematic Universe. Doctor Strange can do stuff in the mirror universe, which is yet again it's an alternate reality that they can do stuff there that will not affect the real reality. Blah 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 blah. No, this has been really good. I've really enjoyed this story because yet again it makes me think a lot. It's really bizarre. It makes you wonder if it's the only Euclidean primitive out there, right? There can't only be one. It's not like he's a god. He even said no god. But, 'tis just a story. I have been Nate at Night, and I have really enjoyed reading this. Thank you yet again, Eclosion K2, for this awesome opportunity. I really hope that everybody's had a really fun time with me. I know I sure have. And we will catch you for whatever's next. Take care out there. I haven't slept in 20 years. Tonight, that changes. When I was 10 years old, I drowned in a lake. I was gone for 8 minutes. No pulse, no breathing. The doctor said it was a miracle I survived without brain damage, let alone survived at all. My parents called it divine intervention. They were religious after all. But I wasn't the same after that day. Not just because of the flashbacks or the fact that I stopped going near water entirely. Hell, I couldn't even shower for weeks after. I know, gross. But something else was wrong. I stopped sleeping. Completely. At first, the doctors thought it was trauma. My body was flooded with adrenaline, making rest impossible. They ran tests, kept me overnight in sleep studies, even put electrodes on my head to monitor brain activity. But the results just confused them. My brain acted like it was sleeping. It cycled through REM patterns. My body entered the rhythms of someone in deep sleep. But I was awake. fully aware of every passing second, every movement around me. I should have been exhausted, delirious, unable to function. But I wasn't. I never felt tired. I never needed sleep. It should have been a real gift. That's what people told me when I got older. Imagine all the time you have now, they said. No wasted hours, and think of all the hobbies. But they don't understand. They don't know what happens when a person is awake for too long, because we're not supposed to be. Because there are things in this world that only come out when we sleep. And if you stop sleeping, they notice. At first, it was small things. I'd see flickers in my peripheral vision, shadows that disappeared when I turned my head. I thought it was just exhaustion manifesting in weird ways. Except I never felt exhausted. Then, the whispers came. I'd hear them at night, murmuring just below the threshold of comprehension. If I turned on the lights, the voices stopped. If I played music, they slipped beneath the sound waves. No one else heard them. No one else understood what was happening because, well, it was just so inconceivable. I mean, you see it in horror movies, but those are just movies. Then they started getting closer. One night when I was 16, I woke up to find a man standing at the foot of my bed. This was the first time I had seen them. He was tall and thin, dressed in a black suit that looked soaked through, as if he had just climbed out of a lake. His face was wrong. Not distorted, not monstrous, just wrong. Like something copied a human face but got the details slightly off. His lips were too thin. His nose too sharp, too long. His skin too smooth. But his eyes weren't there at all. Just two hollow voids, darker than the rest of the room. I wanted to scream, to move, to do something. But my body was locked in place. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Minutes? Hours? I didn't blink. He didn't blink. He didn't even breathe. And then just as the sun began creeping through the blinds, he vanished. Like I wasn't even worth his time. Like he was just checking on me, watching over me, making sure I was safe. After that, I saw them everywhere. A woman in the reflection of my bathroom mirror when I got up in the middle of the night, watching me with her mouth stretched too wide, like she was screaming in silence. A child sitting on the floor of my room at 3 a.m., smiling as he looked at a toy car dripping in water. A thing, a shape, I can't even describe because it was wrong in ways my brain couldn't comprehend. Perched on my ceiling, his head crooked like a broken marionette. They never moved when I looked at them directly. Just watched. One night when I was 18, I got brave, or stupid, enough to whisper, "What do you want?" The man in the soaked suit smiled, slow, knowing. "You're not supposed to be here." I didn't know what he meant. I didn't want to know. But I do know this. Every night, people all over the world close their eyes and sleep peacefully, unaware that something watches over them, keeping them safe. Because something does. And I think I was supposed to die in that lake. I think whatever governs the space between wakefulness and sleep, the thing that lets people drift into unconsciousness safely, I think it missed me that day. I don't think I was supposed to come back. And now I'm stuck. Awake in a world where I was never meant to stay. Because sleep isn't just rest. It's protection. And when you stay awake too long, they start to notice. They realize you could see them. And now, after 20 years of sleepless nights, the whispers have changed. Not a warning, not a threat, just a fact. Time's up. I don't move, I don't breathe. Because for the first time since I was 16 years old, they moved. The man in the suit tilts his head just slightly. The woman in the mirror curls her too wide mouth into a smile. The child on my floor stops smiling. And the thing on my ceiling? It climbs down. They were never watching over me. They were waiting. And now I finally understand. I wasn't supposed to come back that day. And tonight, I won't. And that was I Haven't Slept in 20 Years. Tonight, That Changes by Dreadful Film. I bet you're not that dreadful. I bet you're a great film. So this is another classic example of an interesting take on a normal thing, right? Where it's the idea of not having sleep and potentially causing delusions. But there's a bit more to it because obviously this person was meant to have died, right? Or at least it's believed to be that they were supposed to have died, and maybe they were, because they didn't die, it destroyed some kind of natural order that we're not aware of, right? Such as, like, if you were to go along those kind of concepts, I guess you could say it would be like a balance, right? Where if somebody is meant to die at a certain time, like if you want to go with the idea of fate, destiny, grand master plan, however you want to define it, and then for some reason something stopped it from happening, therefore he does not die. And then because that has happened, it has changed the course of whatever the natural order is, which therefore causes problems and disturbances. And I mean that's what I'm understanding anyway out of this. And I think it's quite interesting, especially because it's not just like, oh no, they think, they're never gonna be a normal person again and blah blah blah, never sleep again. I mean, first off, all right, can we all admit, I think to not have any side effects and to be awake 24/7, it's kind of awesome. I could catch up on a lot of shit. I really could. That'd be awesome. That'd be a weird superpower, but a superpower I think a lot of us could really use, right? Glorifying aside, what we really need to think about here is the fact that it kind of jumps out to me that the creatures, I'm going to use that word at the moment, these creatures that are there watching him are all all wet, right? They're all soaked in water. I think that's to reflect the fact that he was supposed to drown in the lake, right? So that makes sense in my head. But I think if, say, he were to have meant to have died in a different scenario, it would still be these same creatures, but then they would be more reflective of whatever that situation was instead. Which makes me think these are kind of like, maybe soul collectors, maybe hunters. Clearly they're working for something or some higher power. That's what I'm kind of gathering out of this scenario. And some of the descriptions, first off, I've got to say, immediately made me think of things like Beetlejuice, because they have some like super weird moments where they have like, stretched faces and weird monstrous looks, and it's just really funny. So yeah, that was a thing that this made me think about was Beetlejuice. Another thing this story made me think about is the Russian sleep experiment. And, for those of you who don't know about that, which I get the feeling a lot of people do at this point, I mean, it's been out on the internet for ages. I'm not going to spoil it if you haven't read it. It's pretty wild. It's pretty freaking wild. I don't know if I'm allowed to read it. I'd have to have a look. It's quite a wild story. It's a creepypasta. It's not real, so don't worry. A lot of people thought it was real, but no, it's not real. It's entirely fictional. Those things. I mean, I think there have been sleep experiments over the years. I get the feeling there have been. I don't think it does what happens in that story. I know it can have very detrimental effects on your health, so don't do crazy shit like stay awake for days at a time. That is, you can like destroy brain activity and things like that. You can really mess your health up if you were to do stuff like that. And I think in some cases, maybe people can die. I question mark on that one. I really don't know. Don't quote me. I get the feeling that's been mentioned somewhere and I've read it, but doesn't mean it's true. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I don't know all that stuff. But either way, this is a fantastic little story, and it makes me wonder where it's going to go. Right? If there is going to be more set in this universe, maybe there's a little bit more explanation about what's going on, because it's almost like they, after all this time, have been given the order to do something. Right? It's very interesting. Makes me wonder what's going on a little bit more. But that's just me. Well, I have been Nate at Night. I've really enjoyed the story. Thank you yet again, Dreadful Film, for this opportunity. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. What did you think about the story? What did it make you think of? Maybe other things that kind of jumped to your mind as well. I'm really curious. Really curious. This has been awesome. Thank you guys so much, and take care out there. Shout out to these cool peeps. Seriously, we wouldn't have got this far without them. You're all amazing. I love you all so much. Honestly, it's tremendous work you do. Supporting the channel, keeping us afloat. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. You too could become a cool peep for just $1 a month. What that's going to get you is 2 weeks early access to future videos. It's also going to get you exclusive members-only content. And there might be extra goodies coming along the way. What can I say? I'm just charitable like that. You can also show your support by tipping through either Super Chats, Super Thanks, both on YouTube, or through my streamlabs.com URL, which will be in the description of future videos below. Cheers for now, guys.